Hello guys, welcome to the fiction series. Today we are gonna see, what if Naruto was the avatar of the Elemental Nations and got Harem? Part 1. Huge shout out to Dimerisreal for this story. If you want more awesome fan fiction like this, don't forget to hit that subscribe button, so without wasting any time, let's get into the video. On Hagakure, the village hidden in the leaves, had faced a terrifying threat that nearly brought about its destruction. It was not an enemy village or a human adversary, but a force of nature itself, a Biju, a colossal beast composed of raw chakra, the energy that flows through all living beings. This was no ordinary Biju, but the QB, the mightiest of the tailed beasts, a nine-tailed fox of unimaginable power. Countless lives were lost in the battle against this formidable foe, but with the aid of their esteemed Hokage, Minato Namikaze, the village managed to emerge victorious, though not without a heavy price. Minato, a prodigy among shinobi, realized that killing the QB was an impossible feat. Instead, he devised a daring plan to seal the beast's immense chakra within his newborn triplets Naruto, Menma, and Mito. With the assistance of his predecessor, Hiruzen Sarutobi, who sacrificed his own soul to the Shinigami, the sealing ritual was carried out. The QB's yin chakra was sealed within Mito, the yang chakra within Menma, and the creature's very soul was sealed within Naruto. However, a single tael's worth of the QB's chakra remained, which Minato initially intended to seal within Naruto. But fate had other plans. Kushina, Minato's wife and the mother of the triplets, was left in a critical condition after giving birth. To save her life, Minato had no choice but to seal the remaining chakra within her. As the family recovered from the harrowing ordeal, Minato prepared to address the village and inform them of the events that had transpired. Standing before the anxious populace, he revealed the truth: his children were now the vessels of the QB, but they were also the village's new heroes, destined to become its protectors. Initially, the villagers were gripped by fear, believing that the seals would weaken the children, leaving them vulnerable to possession by the demons they now harbored. However, Minato's reassurance and unwavering resolve eventually quelled their doubts, and the village erupted in cheers, celebrating the birth of their new heroes, whose futures as powerful shinobi seemed assured. 6 years later. Loneliness was an all too familiar emotion for Naruto Uzumaki Namikaze, the firstborn son of the esteemed Hokage. Despite being the heir to 2 illustrious clans, the young boy found himself cast aside, a mere shadow in the eyes of his own family. The village streets whispered tales of his supposed insignificance, each murmur a knife twisting in his heart. He was the forgotten child, overshadowed by the supposed potential of his younger twins, Menma and Mito. While they basked in the adoration of their parents and the entire village, Naruto was left to wander the lonely paths alone. Flashback: Uzumaki Namikaze compound. Well, it happened on a warm summer evening when the sun was just beginning to set, casting a soft orange glow over the peaceful village of Konoha. The streets were relatively quiet, save for the occasional laughter of children playing in the distance. 6-year-old Naruto was sitting by the window in his room, his bright blue eyes gazing wistfully at the world outside. It was a familiar scene, one he had grown accustomed to over the years, watching his siblings, Menma and Mito, run and play without a care in the world, while he remained an outsider, trapped within the confines of his own home. As the sound of a puff of smoke reached his ears, Naruto perked up, recognizing the telltale sign of his godfather Jiraiya's arrival. He quietly slipped out of his room and crept down the hallway, suppressing his chakra instinctively, a skill he had mastered out of necessity. Naruto peered around the corner, catching sight of his parents, Minato and Kushina, descending the stairs to greet Jiraiya. A flicker of hope ignited within him, a childlike part of him daring to believe that perhaps, for once, he would be included in whatever was about to transpire. Minato descended the stairs, his brow furrowed in confusion as he exchanged a puzzled glance with Kushina. "I don't know, Kushi-chan," he murmured, his voice laced with uncertainty. Naruto, ever the inquisitive child, cracked open his bedroom door and trailed after his parents, moving with a cautious, silent tread, instinctively suppressing his chakra. "Jiraiya-sensei, what brings you here?" Minato inquired, his gaze settling upon his former mentor. Jiraiya's expression was grave, prompting Minato to slip seamlessly into his role as Hokage, his demeanor shifting to one of utmost seriousness. "I've just returned from Mount Myoboku, where I spoke with Shima and Fukasaku," Jiraiya began, his tone heavy with significance. "They revealed a prophecy to me: the child born of a flash of yellow and fury of red with an ancient power will reshape the world in darkness or in light." Minato's eyes widened, his expression growing pensive as he processed Jiraiya's words. Could it be possible that either Menma or Mito is the child of prophecy? He ventured, his voice tinged with a mixture of awe and trepidation. "Yeah, we need to prepare Menma and Mito for the future," Jiraiya affirmed with a nod, his jaw set in determination. Minato and Kushina exchanged a startled glance, their eyes brimming with a myriad of emotions. "Are you sure, sensei?" Minato asked, his voice wavering ever so slightly. Jiraiya let out a guttural grunt, his gaze unwavering as he responded to Minato. Absolutely. We must begin training them immediately. Failure to control the power of the QB's chakra could plunge the world into darkness. He paused, considering Minato's unspoken question. As for Naruto, he received the QB's soul. He'll be fine. He holds the key. Jiraiya stressed the importance of focusing solely on the twins, locking eyes with Kushina and Minato, silently seeking their assent. Our primary concern should be ensuring that they become indomitable in the face of darkness. Naruto's heart sank as Jiraiya's dismissive words echoed in his mind. His own parents agreed without a second thought, as if he meant nothing to them. Tears streamed down his whiskered cheeks, the pain of rejection piercing his soul. Why? He whispered, his voice trembling. Don't I matter at all? Jiraiya and his parents continued their discussion, oblivious to the anguish they had caused their eldest son. Naruto felt invisible, a mere ghost in his own home. Unable to bear the emotional turmoil any longer, Naruto turned and fled to his room, his feet carrying him as swiftly as his broken heart would allow. He flung himself onto his bed, burying his face in the pillow to muffle his sobs. Why me? He cried, his body shaking with each agonizing wail. What did I do wrong? The harsh reality of being overlooked and deemed unworthy by his own family crushed his spirit. In that moment, loneliness enveloped him like a suffocating cloak, making it hard to breathe. Naruto clung to his pillow, seeking solace in its soft embrace, as tears of rejection stained the fabric. His parents' indifference cut deeper than any blade, leaving a wound that would take years to heal, if it ever did. Flashback end. Konoha. 1 year later. Uzumaki Namikaze compound. The warm autumn breeze carried the scent of freshly baked treats as Naruto wandered through the bustling streets of Konoha. It was October 10th, a day that should have been filled with joy and celebration, yet for the young boy, it was a stark reminder of his family's indifference. The morning sun cast a warm glow on his unruly golden locks, streaked with fiery crimson. He was a striking blend of his parents' features, the vibrant red hair of his Uzumaki lineage, intertwined with the sun-kissed blonde of his Namikaze heritage. As he approached the gates of the Uzumaki Namikaze compound, the sounds of laughter and music drifted through the air, beckoning him closer. Yet, Naruto's steps slowed, his heart heavy with the knowledge that he would be nothing more than a spectator in his own home. The sprawling courtyard was adorned with colorful banners and lanterns, casting a warm glow over the gathered guests. Clan heads and heirs mingled among the crowd, their faces alight with excitement as they celebrated the birthdays of Menma and Mito, the favored twins. Naruto's gaze swept over the familiar faces, the stoic Hyugas, the boisterous Inuzukas, and the ever-present Uchihas. He caught sight of his parents, Minato and Kushina, their eyes shining with pride as they showered their other children with gifts and affection. The pang of loneliness pierced Naruto's heart as he watched from afar, his presence unnoticed and unacknowledged. He knew better than to approach, for his mere existence seemed to be an unwelcome reminder of a past they wished to forget. During the gathering, Jiraiya's gaze fell upon Mito, standing beside her parents, and two prominent figures from Konoha seated nearby. As the discussions began, Jiraiya unfurled a large scroll, addressing the group. Your training has progressed well. Tsunade and I believe it's time for both of you to sign our summoning contracts, he announced. Turning to Mito, he said, you'll be signing my slug summoning contract. Mito nodded, a smile gracing her features. Tsunade placed her own scroll on the table, giving Menma a pointed look. And you, Menma, will sign the toad summoning contract. Menma's eyes widened, and he nodded vigorously, mirroring his sister's smile. Jiraiya and Tsunade shared a proud grin at the twins' enthusiasm. Now, you'll both need to sign your names using your blood, Jiraiya instructed, producing 2 kunai and handing one to each of them. After the twins received their summoning contracts, Minato silenced the room, his words cutting deep into Naruto's heart. We have an announcement, but first, presents for you both. Kushina approached Mito, a katana in her hands. Here you go, Mito, she said, her voice filled with pride. I'll be teaching you the whirlpool kenjutsu style, passed down in our clan. Mito's eyes shone with excitement. Thank you, Mom. Turning to the twins, Minato declared, Menma, Mito, I'll be teaching you both the Rasengan. Thanks, Mom and Dad. The twins exclaimed in unison. Minato's expression grew in excitement as he made the fateful announcement. I hereby name Menma as the heir of the Namikaze clan, and Mito as the heir of the Uzumaki clan. Naruto's eyes widened in shock, his heart shattering into a million pieces, as if a vital part of him had finally given way. He gazed upon his siblings, their expressions a mixture of elation and bewilderment, their faces adorned with broad, joyous smiles. Tears cascaded down Naruto's cheeks, a torrent of anguish and despair. After a few moments of tense silence, the audience erupted into a thunderous cheer, celebrating the news that Konoha's saviors had been named clan heirs. Why do I even bother? Naruto thought to himself, a sense of worthlessness engulfing him as intricate dragon tattoos began to materialize on his arms and torso. Enduring the villagers' hatred was already a burden, he continued, the markings extending up to the right side of his forehead, forming a distinctive dragon mark reminiscent of Tanjiro's Demon Slayer mark. And now, my own family forsakes me. My parents make no effort to support me. My siblings receive training from them, and they mock me for it. Even my godparents disregard my existence, consumed by their meaningless prophecy. Naruto's voice trembled with fury as the tattoos adorning his skin began to emanate a soft blue glow. So why am I not good enough for them? He exclaimed, his eyes too illuminated by the same ethereal radiance. A massive wave of power rippled outward, causing the Uzumaki Namikaze complex to tremble violently, putting every ninja on edge. What? Where is this power coming from? Jiraiya exclaimed, his tone laced with confusion. His gaze settled on a boy standing at the back, the source of this immense energy. Wait, is that Naruto? And those tattoos, they represent an avatar. Realization struck Jiraiya like a thunderbolt. Did we misinterpret the prophecy, or have we been training the wrong children all along? Ignored since the age of 3, all because of a foolish prophecy, Naruto declared, his eyes blazing with a brilliant blue light as he stared defiantly at the others. Fine, if you're going to treat me like this, I don't need any of you. You're all aware of the law permitting the disownment of a clan's oldest son. I'm packing my things and leaving this wretched place. I am not welcome here. Naruto ascended the stairs to his room, hastily gathering his belongings. He returned moments later, his gaze fixed upon his family, and announced, "Good day, Uzumaki Namikaze family, for this is the last time you will lay eyes upon me." With a resounding slam, Naruto flung the door shut, causing the surrounding walls to crack under the sheer force of his chakra-infused departure. A tense silence descended upon the Uzumaki Namikaze complex, the air thick with shock and disbelief. A thunderous slap reverberated throughout the room, shattering the stillness. Kushina recoiled, a crimson handprint emblazoned upon her cheek, her gaze meeting the furious visage of Mikoto Uchiha. "Damn you, Kushina. You disown your own son over a mere prophecy." The enraged Uchiha matriarch exclaimed. Her burning gaze shifted to Minato. "And you? You should be ashamed of yourself, for you were once a damned orphan after the events of the Second Great Ninja War." Minato's head hung low, shame etched upon his features. "And you too." Mikoto's withering glare fell upon Jiraiya and Tsunade. "Jiraiya, you named that boy after a character in your first book, and you, Tsunade-dan, would be utterly ashamed of the woman you have become," Mikoto spat, her words dripping with disdain. Jiraiya and Tsunade shared a despondent expression, unable to meet her accusing stare. "I am leaving, Hokage-sama," she hissed, her tone laced with bitter contempt as she slammed the door behind her, causing the already cracked frame to splinter further. Kushina collapsed to the floor, overcome with anguish, sobs racking her body as she cried, "I am a terrible mother." At the Hokage monument, just beyond the Uzumaki Namikaze complex, Naruto sat atop the visage of the third Hokage, tears streaming down his face. He approached the edge, peering down at the dizzying drop, and spoke, "Should I simply end it all? No one would care if I died." But before he could act on his dark musings, a ghostly hand reached out, stilling his movements. The spectral figure of a Shaolin monk materialized before him, his expression etched with concern. "Young one, why do you weep?" the monk inquired. Naruto lifted his gaze, his eyes glistening with unshed tears, and replied, "My parents have disowned me." The monk's brow furrowed, and he asked, "So, who are you, child?" Naruto lifted his gaze, his eyes shimmering with unshed tears. "I'm Naruto Uzumaki Namikaze, the oldest son of the Hokage," he replied, his voice laced with bitterness. "But it seems that my own family has cast me aside, all because of some foolish prophecy." The monk's expression softened, and he nodded in understanding. "I see. It is a heavy burden to bear, the rejection of those who should cherish you most." Naruto clenched his fists, his tattoos pulsing with a faint glow. "They favored my siblings, Menma and Mito, believing them to be the children of prophecy. They showered them with gifts and training, while I was left to fend for myself." The monk listened intently, his ghostly form shifting between the visages of avatars past, each face etched with wisdom and empathy. "Why am I not good enough?" Naruto cried out, his voice cracking with emotion. "What did I do to deserve such neglect? Am I truly so worthless in their eyes?" The monk's form shimmered, and his visage shifted between the past avatars as he spoke to Naruto. "Young avatar, do not let the cruelties of this world diminish your spirit." His voice echoed with the timeless wisdom of countless lifetimes. "Though your path may seem shrouded in darkness now, the light of hope still flickers within you." "So, who are you anyway?" Naruto said. "I am Avatar Aang," the ghostly figure said, his form shimmering between the past avatars. Naruto's eyes widened in disbelief as the ethereal spirits of the previous avatars materialized behind Aang, their eyes glowing a soft blue. "But how?" Naruto asked, his voice trembling with a mix of awe and confusion. Aang's gentle eyes looked upon Naruto with a mix of compassion and resolve. You carry the legacy of all who came before, a profound connection to the very elements that shape our world. Do not surrender to despair, for your destiny is greater than you can imagine. The ghostly figures surrounding Aang nodded in solemn agreement, their ethereal forms pulsing with spiritual energy. Naruto's tears slowed as he felt a warmth envelop him, a sense of purpose stirring within his soul. Faithfully tend to the small flames that guide your path, Aang continued, his voice a soothing balm. For it is in the smallest of actions that true strength is forged. When you embrace your role as a beacon of blessings, the universe will reflect that light back upon you tenfold. Naruto's tattoos began to glow brighter, the azure markings seeming to hum with ancient power. Aang reached out, gently resting his transparent hand upon Naruto's forehead. Doubt is the shadow cast by fear, but faith is the brilliant sun that banishes it. Believe, young Avatar, for when we fight with conviction in our hearts, we are doubly prepared to triumph. The warm rush of energy flowed through Naruto, filling him with a sense of profound tranquility. As his consciousness faded, the last thing he perceived was Aang's kind smile and the ethereal chorus of the past avatars whispering, "Embrace your destiny." Naruto's mindscape. Flames. Darkness seized me as black flames enshrouded me, an ominous mantle of distorted sentiment. Sitting in the blazing heat, Naruto pondered, what is the purpose of my existence? The question a heavy weight upon his soul. Is solitude my fate? Perhaps he longed to be invisible, to fade into the background of his village and family life. The isolation he felt was unbearable, a constant ache that gnawed at his heart. As the black flames ignited higher, a dim shadow enveloped the surroundings, gradually fading until a man emerged, bathed in a brilliant glow. It was then that Naruto heard Aang's voice echo within his thoughts, the wise avatar imparting his guidance. Remember the power of dedicating yourself faithfully, even to the smallest tasks, Aang advised. Those who strive to be a positive force for others will continuously receive abundance. Believe unwaveringly in what others may dismiss as improbable, and success will be more likely to find you. His words carried the weight of ages, an eternal truth that resonated deep within Naruto's soul. When faith joins a warrior's fight, the likelihood of victory increases twofold, Aang continued, his tone resolute. The darkness seemed to recede ever so slightly, the black flames wavering as if in response to Aang's words. Naruto found himself clinging to that glimmer of hope, his heart yearning for a purpose, for a reason to keep fighting against the isolation that threatened to consume him. Naruto felt the searing heat of white flames enveloping him, their brilliant radiance bathing the surroundings in a warm, ethereal glow. Suddenly, he found himself transported to an otherworldly realm, unlike anything he had ever witnessed. Confusion etched across his face as he surveyed the unfamiliar landscape, his eyes wide with bewilderment. Where am I? He asked, his voice laced with a mixture of wonder and unease. Aang's ethereal form materialized before him, his expression serene and welcoming. You're now in the spirit world, Naruto, he replied, his words carrying a weight of wisdom that belied his youthful appearance. Naruto's curiosity piqued, and he eagerly inquired, what exactly is the spirit world? Aang's brow furrowed ever so slightly, and he shook his head. This is not a topic that can be explained in just a few sentences, he said, a hint of solemnity in his tone. Come, take a seat, Naruto, for I shall delve into the intricacies of this wondrous realm. The spirit world is a parallel plane of reality that coexists alongside the physical world inhabited by humans. It is home to the spirits, a vast range of paranormal and supernatural entities that often embody different aspects of life and nature. In the time of Rava, the spirit gates found at both poles were accessible to link the two different worlds. Notably, humans and spirits existed in varying landscapes and places due to the spirits roaming uninhibited in forest regions, while humanity lived in reclusion atop separate lions' pools. Each time man went into the forests to hunt, they received gesture abilities from their respective lion pools to warn of potential possession by hostile spirits, which often led to their physical ruin. Juan and the people living atop the air lion turtle were among the few to not fear and even befriend the spirits. When the tensions between mankind and the spirits reached a climax after Vadu's escape, resulting in several casualties, Avatar Juan closed the spirit portals, following the harmonic convergence of 9829 BG. Separating the two worlds and making travel between the two worlds extremely rare, as it was only possible through a few specific locations and methods. Aside from a handful of enlightened individuals, only the Avatar made the journey in spiritual form, as the bridge between the two worlds to converse with the spirits and ask them for guidance. Avatar Yangchen's preference during her lifetime was frequently for humans fighting against spirits in actuality. Heedless of those breaking the promised barrier, Yangchen relied on regular beliefs longer than she trusted the unscrupulous humans' inconsistency with the coupling delivered benefits. Due to Yangchen's actions, many spirits became dark during the lifetime of Avatar Kuruk. These dark spirits took advantage of newly created pathways that led from their spiritual realm into the physical world. Their goal was to create chaos and destroy as many humans as possible. Kuruk tried to fight against the dark spirits, but it proved to be a toll on his mental and physical being. Later, he turned to the spirit world to end the ones that he couldn't save. With the latter's discovery of fresh openings connecting the physical and spiritual realms, Kuruk traveled between both worlds so that he could use his bending power to accomplish this task. Eventually, the Avatar's hunt led him to the origin of the rifts between the two worlds, fatherly glowworms. While Lavada Kuruk was able to injure the malevolent soul, escaping left a devastating physical impression on him that weighed heavily on him. Right from the birth of Avatar Roku, there was a sudden surge of strange spiritual activity in the physical world. This led to an increase in the number of evil spirits, which were mainly found around the dormant spirit portals located in polar regions. A lot of spiritual communities linked this activity to the exploitation of natural resources and land by neighboring nations during the Industrial Revolution. Additionally, sacred land was being misused for political motives, and there was also an immense killing of ancient creatures like the dragons. Just after Lu Ten's demise in 95 AG, Iroh ventured into the spirit world, hoping to see his offspring's apparition. Nonetheless, Iroh was fruitless in his hunt, since the spirit world did not represent a call among the dead. However, Iroh stumbled upon himself and immediately understood that the trip transpired for him. He chose to embrace life with enthusiasm prefix and take the role of being an enlightened caregiver to complement the role of his late son. In 99 AG, Hai-Bai kidnapped Sokka and residents of Senlin village to the spirit world to seek revenge after Fire Nation's devastation of a forest. By showing the meddlesome spirit a vision of regeneration, I steadied its ire long enough for Hai-Bai to release the citizens back into the material world. Following this incident, I sauntered into the spirit oasis and dove right into uncovering secrets when tasked with finding out more about the two vital moon and ocean spirit identities by retracing his steps to the spirit world. Wan Shai Tong was very angry with Team Avatar for using the knowledge in his library to develop an attack strategy on the Fire Nation. Therefore, he decided to move his library to the spirit world in the spring of the following year. When I was hit by Azula's lightning, I died and was revived by Katara. Soon after that, I discovered that I was trapped in the spirit world. Consequently, I had to connect with my previous past lives, the four most recent ones, to fix and retrieve the injured Avatar spirit and protect his relationship with them so that I could reset in the physical world with no recollection of what had happened since my lightning attack. Throughout my journey, I understood that every Avatar makes errors that must be solved, as humans are imperfect. Naruto gazed at Aang inquisitively. Can spirits from that realm cross over into our world? Aang nodded. It is possible, but only through special portals connecting the two realms. He paused, his expression turning pensive. Let me tell you how Avatar Korra managed to open these portals. Before 171 AG, travel between the physical and spirit worlds was an incredibly rare occurrence, only achievable by the Avatar, the sole bridge connecting the two realms. Even then, only the Avatar's spiritual essence could traverse the divide, while their physical form remained bound to the mortal plane. Conversely, a handful of exceptionally powerful spirits possessed the ability to manifest in corporeal form, though doing so forced them to forsake their immortality. However, when Avatar Korra reopened the ancient spirit portals in 171 AG, the boundaries between worlds became far more permeable. Suddenly, spirits and humans alike could freely cross over, exploring and experiencing the wonders of each unique realm with unprecedented ease. Apart from the spirit portals, the possibilities for mortals to enter the spirit world were severely limited. A scant few might achieve this feat through deep meditation, or if they were ferried across by a benevolent wandering spirit. Certain hallowed sites in the physical world, such as the spirit oasis at the North Pole or the Forgetful Valley near Harem, also served as gateways to the ethereal plane, revered and idolized by those who dwelled nearby. At specific times of the year, the veil separating the worlds thinned ever further. During the winter and summer solstices, the boundary grew feeble, allowing denizens of either realm to pass through with greater ease. And each day at dusk, when the spirit energies peaked, the barrier offered the least resistance. However, mere mortals who found themselves in the spirit world were left powerless, unable to wield their bending abilities, unless they had physically traversed a spirit portal. The Avatar alone could access the full breadth of spiritual energies, granting them the power to energibend without needing to pass through a portal first. Korra's decision to leave the portals open in 171 AG and the accidental creation of a third portal in 174 AG disrupted the delicate balance between humans and spirits. Some viewed the spirit incursion with trepidation, while others saw opportunity transforming the portals into tourist attractions, offering curated spirit world excursions. Still others sought to exploit the spiritual flora for warfare, repurposing plants from the spirit wilds as weapons. While the spirit world's perception of time aligned with the physical realm when the portals were open, it still experienced the flow of chronology in a markedly different manner. The spirit energies ebbed and flowed in ethereal patterns, altering the landscape and its inhabitants in subtle, unpredictable ways. Naruto's curiosity piqued as he asked Aang, "Have any malicious individuals ever gained entry into the spirit world?" Aang nodded solemnly. "Yes, Naruto, and the consequences have been severe." He paused, gathering his thoughts before continuing. During the year 171 AG, Avatar Korra inadvertently allowed Unalaq, a powerful waterbender and my descendant, access to the spirit world by opening the northern and southern portals. This action released a torrent of dark emotions that threatened the very fabric of the spirit realm. Aang's expression grew grave as he recalled the events. Unalaq's true intentions were nefarious. He sought to release Vadu, the embodiment of chaos and darkness, from his eternal prison. The heightened spiritual energy during the harmonic convergence of that year provided Vadu with a means to escape his bonds. He paused, allowing Naruto to absorb the weight of his words. Though Korra ultimately prevailed in her battle against Vadu, she chose not to close the spirit portals, believing that peaceful coexistence between humans and spirits was essential. Aang's eyes clouded with concern. However, this coexistence brought unexpected difficulties. The spirit wilds resurfaced at the heart of Republic City, and spirit vines rapidly enveloped entire neighborhoods, forcing citizens to evacuate their homes. Naruto listened intently, captivated by the tale's unfolding. The coexistence of humans and spirits saw unexpected difficulties when the spirit wilds resurfaced at the center of Republic City. Spirit vines grew rapidly, causing chaos and leading to entire neighborhoods being deserted as citizens were forced to evacuate. This vegetation served as a habitat for the spirits that had entered the physical world. Learning how to live alongside the uncanny conditions with some acrimony, some curious citizens, including Varrick and Kuvira, explored these plants as a possible wellspring for innovative technology in light of Vadu's violent attack. Unstable energy in the vines, revealed by discovery, made them a hugely powerful weapon despite their original purpose. For this reason, Kuvira seized upon the need for their harvest, even though it would disrupt the spirit wilds, inhabited by a plant population known for imprisoning souls from the physical world into vegetative pods. When visitors arrived, they were left indefinitely trapped between life and death. An already precarious equilibrium was further destabilized when a third entrance between realms was unexpectedly formed in Republic City. This occurrence was catalyzed as a result of the Earth Kingdom's overloaded cannon, firing upon the region's vegetation, and Korra's endeavors to regulate the resulting eruption of otherworldly energy, utilizing her energy manipulation skills. The unintended outcome bore the fruit of a fresh portal connecting the spirit world and the physical realm. Once the invasion of the United Republic of Nations was over, Korra and Asami took a trip to the spirit world through the portal. They explored the area for a few days as a way to relax. Once they returned, they learned that Wanyong-kyum, the landowner surrounding the spirit portal, intended to turn the location into an amusement park and offer expeditions to the spirit world as a new form of amusement. Unfortunately, this idea faced expulsion from various spirits including the dragon eel spirit, urging Korra to denounce the portal in the Republic City, since leaving the port open makes the spirit world more exposed to exploitation and devastation by humans. As a consequence of the fierce altercation between Takuga and the dragon eel spirit that left Takuga deformed, the spirits ruined the field of flowers which served as a gateway to the spirit portal in Republic City. Their action conveyed a message to the humans, urging them to avoid encroaching into their territory in the future. Nonetheless, the portal to the spirit world stayed operational and they continued welcoming humans, albeit with a caveat. Enchanted thorny creepers would grow out of the parched flowers and launch an attack on any humans entering their domain. As Takuga's rebellion reached its end, Asami led the triple threat triad's hijacked airship through the portal into the spirit world. She knew the spirits were resistant to Takuga's poisonous gases, unlike the humans back in Republic City. But after a crash landing, the presence of eerie dark spirits lingered. The dragon eel spirit bluntly claimed that peace between the two worlds was an impossibility, as long as curious humans were selfishly mistreating its home in pursuit of power. But just then, Kyum decided to abandon his rights to the area near the spirit portal and expressed his thanks to Korra and Asami for rescuing his life. The spirits noted this and permitted the portal to stay in place, yet made it clear that they wouldn't remain mute if conditions failed to improve. Takuga capitalized on this moment to evade punishment from the Nock for his indiscretions in the spiritual world. After the appointment of President Zhu Li-moon, who prop-marketed a pacifist campaign, the highest authority granted the Air Nation ownership of the land encircling the portal. Naruto gazed around the ethereal landscape, his brows furrowing as he pondered the transformation of Republic City into the Elemental Nations. What caused this drastic change? He asked, turning his attention towards Aang. Aang's expression grew somber and he nodded towards a woman with rich brown skin, piercing cyan eyes, and flowing dark hair. She wore traditional garments that marked her connection to the Southern Water Tribe. "Greetings, Naruto," she said, offering a warm smile. "I am Korra and I will shed light on the birth of the Elemental Nations." Naruto studied her intently, curiosity etched upon his features. "Korra, it's an honor to meet you. Please, tell me how this transformation unfolded." Korra took a deep breath, her eyes reflecting the weight of her tale. "It began when a monstrous entity, known as the Ten Tails, escaped from the spirit world and unleashed its fury upon Republic City. Despite our best efforts, my team fell one by one, leaving me to face the destructive creature alone." Her gaze grew distant, reliving the harrowing memory. "Just as I teetered on the brink of defeat, a savior emerged, a man who called himself the Sage of Six Paths. He fought valiantly against the beast and ultimately emerged victorious, becoming its Shinchikage." Naruto leaned forward, captivated by her words. "As I lay dying from my injuries, I revealed a crucial truth. The Avatar was the sole source of restoring bending abilities," Korra continued. "The sage then divided the 10 tails into 9 separate entities and imbued them with his chakra, hoping to restore harmony." Her expression darkened. "However, individuals misused this chakra, engaging in battles that left Republic City in ruins and divided it into 6 nations. Konohagakure, Kumagakure, Iwagakure, Kurigakure, Sunagakure, and..." Korra trailed off, her gaze locking with Naruto's. "The Sixth Nation, you will learn about in due time." Naruto nodded slowly, processing the weight of her words. The once vibrant Republic City had been fractured, its legacy forever altered by the catastrophic events that unfolded. The piercing call echoed through the ethereal realm. "It's time, Naruto, your training must commence." Aang's voice reverberated with authority. 2 esteemed figures materialized beside Aang and Korra. An elderly man, adorned in the raiment of a Fire Lord, his eyes a rich brown hue, exuded an air of wisdom. Next to him stood a woman of striking beauty, her dark complexion accentuated by the vibrant Kaioshin warrior garb she wore, emerald eyes peering forth with keen intensity. "We, the Avatars, shall guide you in the mastery of the elements," Aang proclaimed. "I shall impart the ways of the air, teaching you to flow with grace and agility." Korra stepped forward, her gaze resolute. "Under my tutelage, you will learn to bend water, becoming as fluid and adaptable as the ocean's currents." The commanding presence of Kaioshin demanded attention as she spoke. "I shall temper your body and mind, instilling the unyielding fortitude of Earth itself." Roku approached Naruto, his eyes alight with curiosity. "Show me your flames, young one," he urged. Naruto summoned forth 2 contrasting infernos, one a searing black, the other a brilliant white. "Fascinating," Roku murmured, stroking his beard. "Your flames possess duality, embodying 2 distinct capabilities. I shall teach you to wield fire's ferocity with unwavering control." Aang's eyes shimmered with ethereal light as he and the other avatars' eyes glowed a radiant blue. "Are you prepared to embark on this journey, Naruto?" Naruto's own eyes mirrored the luminous hue, the draconic ink designs etched upon his skin pulsing with otherworldly energy. "I am ready, masters," he affirmed, his voice brimming with determination. Time skip. 6 years later. It seems that this place has remained unchanged. A person dressed in a kimono showcasing black, red, and gold hues stands at the entrance of Konoha. "I will be approaching the Hokage to inquire about participating in the Genin graduation test." The news of Naruto's disappearance spread like wildfire through the village, igniting a range of reactions. Minato and Kushina were utterly devastated, their hearts heavy with guilt and remorse. How could they have let their own flesh and blood slip through their fingers? The weight of their negligence was suffocating, and they found themselves drowning in a sea of self-blame. In stark contrast, Menma and Mito, the 2 younger siblings, remained alarmingly indifferent to their brother's absence. Their cold indifference was a slap in the face to their parents, who had once harbored high hopes for their children's bond. It was as if Naruto had never existed in their lives, a mere afterthought in the grand scheme of things. The villagers, however, reacted with a twisted sense of celebration. They believed that the disappearance of Naruto, the vessel of the dreaded 9-tailed fox, was a blessing in disguise. In their eyes, the malevolent being that had once threatened to destroy their very existence had vanished, and they could finally breathe a collective sigh of relief. Little did they know that their revered hero, the son of the Hokage himself, had been whisked away to a different dimension, a realm where he could hone his skills and unleash his true potential. While they rejoiced in his absence, Naruto was undergoing a transformative journey, becoming stronger with every passing day in the spirit world. Upon learning of this unsettling revelation, Minato and Kushina wasted no time in springing into action. Minato, realizing the gravity of the situation, promptly convened an urgent council meeting. With a steely resolve, he made the audacious choice to dissolve the civilian council once and for all. For too long, the corrupt council had wielded excessive authority over the village's affairs, using their power to further their own selfish interests. Minato recognized that their reign had to be terminated for the sake of Konoha and its people. With a single decisive stroke, he severed the council's stranglehold on the village, paving the way for a new era of transparency and accountability. Flashback. After the council meeting. As Minato sat in his office, his mind was plagued by doubt and regret over the disappearance of his son, Naruto. The weight of his actions seemed to bear down on him, leaving him feeling lost and helpless. It was in this moment of despair that Jiraiya appeared, a glimmer of hope in the darkness. "I think I know where he could be," Jiraiya said confidently, his voice cutting through the silence like a warm breeze. Minato's eyes widened, his heart quickening with a newfound sense of hope. "Where is it?" he asked, trying to keep his voice steady despite the storm of emotions raging within him. Jiraiya didn't hesitate in his response. "The spirit world," he said, those two words carrying a weight that Minato had never fully comprehended before. At first, the concept of the spirit world was foreign and confusing to Minato. He had heard stories of this mystical realm, but he had always dismissed them as mere fantasies, a figment of someone's overactive imagination. But as Jiraiya began to explain, his words painted a vivid picture that Minato found himself drawn into. The spirit world is a place where the ghosts of former avatars and individuals with strong spiritual connections can access this spiritual plane, Jiraiya clarified, his voice taking on a reverent tone as he spoke of this sacred realm. Minato listened intently, his curiosity growing with each word. He had always been a man of logic and reason, but there was something about Jiraiya's explanation that resonated deep within him. Perhaps it was the idea that his son, his curious and adventurous son, had found solace in a world beyond their own that filled him with a sense of wonder. Jiraiya went on to describe the wonders and dangers of the spirit world, painting a vivid picture of a realm where different elements and spirits coexisted in harmony, yet also held immense power that could be tapped into by those skilled in bending. Minato found himself enraptured by the idea of a world so different from their own, a world that held secrets and mysteries waiting to be uncovered. As he sat in the council chambers, his mind raced with thoughts of his son. He remembered the inquisitive child who had always been drawn to the unknown, the one who had an insatiable thirst for knowledge and adventure. In that moment, Minato could almost picture Naruto in this spirit world, his eyes wide with wonder and his spirit soaring with the freedom of discovery. Minato had always believed in the tangible, the physical world that he could see and touch. But Jiraiya's stories had opened his eyes to a whole new realm of existence, one that he had never truly considered before. The spirit world, a place where the spirits of the dead resided, where one could communicate with those who had passed on. It was a concept that both fascinated and terrified him. As he contemplated the idea of his son being in this spirit world, a mix of emotions swirled within him. On one hand, he was filled with a sense of awe at the thought of Naruto exploring such an extraordinary place. But on the other, a nagging fear tugged at his heart, a fear that his son might be in danger, trapped in a world beyond his understanding. Jiraiya seemed to sense the doubt in Minato's eyes, and he offered a reassuring smile. "Only time will tell," he said, his voice gentle yet firm. "But I believe that your son is safe and well in the spirit world." Minato nodded, trying to cling to Jiraiya's words and the hope they offered. But still, he couldn't shake the feeling of worry that weighed heavily on his heart. He knew that the spirit world was a dangerous place, a realm that held mysteries and powers beyond their comprehension. The thought of his son navigating such a treacherous world filled him with a sense of dread. "Thank you for telling me about the spirit world," Minato said, his voice heavy with gratitude and uncertainty. "I had no idea such a place existed." Jiraiya offered a warm smile, his eyes shining with wisdom and understanding. "No problem, my student," he replied. "I'm always happy to share my knowledge." With those words, Jiraiya disappeared from the council chambers, leaving Minato alone with his thoughts. Minato watched him go, his mind swirling with a whirlwind of emotions, hope, fear, wonder, and uncertainty all battling for dominance within him. As he turned his thoughts back to his son, a silent prayer escaped his lips. "Be careful out there, my son," he said mentally, his voice laced with a father's love and concern. "I love you." In that moment, Minato realized that no matter how far Naruto had ventured, no matter what realms he had explored, their bond as father and son remained unbroken. And with that realization came a newfound determination to find his son, to bring him home, and to embrace the unknown together, no matter what challenges lay ahead. Flashback ends. During Naruto's extended absence from Konohagakure for his training in the spirit world, Minato faced numerous challenges and duties as the Hokage. Among these, a pivotal responsibility was to tackle the deeply ingrained corruption within the civilian council, which had long proven detrimental to the village's well-being. This substantial task required addressing issues such as financial inequalities, shortcomings within the Ninja Academy standards, and the unethical abuse of authority by certain civilians. Minato wholeheartedly embraced this formidable challenge, propelled by a steadfast dedication to justice. He recognized that overcoming these entrenched corrupt practices was crucial for the prosperity and advancement of Konoha and its inhabitants. With prudent planning and decisive actions, he initiated a period of transformation within the intricate dynamics of the civilian council. His priority was rectifying the widespread inflation that had seeped into various segments of society. The previous administration had turned a blind eye to this injustice, allowing a select few to accumulate wealth unfairly. Minato dismantled this unjust enrichment by implementing fair pricing regulations across all sectors in Konoha. Following this, Minato directed his efforts towards a comprehensive restructuring of the Ninja Academy syllabus. Under his leadership, new and innovative techniques were integrated alongside rigorous practical training, tailored to better prepare young ninjas to confront real-world challenges. Additionally, he emphasized ethical principles and instilled a strong sense of responsibility toward safeguarding the village. In conclusion, Minato addressed the blatant opportunism of individuals who sought to take advantage of Naruto's absence by selling substandard goods at exorbitant prices. Taking swift and decisive action, he swiftly removed these individuals from their roles, replacing them with honest and upright citizens, committed to serving the community with unwavering integrity. Present time. At the Hokage office. Narrator. As we step into the Hokage's office, the atmosphere seems serene and tranquil. However, that peace is quickly shattered by a loud groan of frustration echoing through the room. Ugh. Narrator. The sound breaks the calmness in an instant, and even the Hokage himself can't help but show signs of exasperation as he looks upon the chaotic scene before him. It's clear that despite his position as leader, he too experiences moments of stress and annoyance just like any other human being. Yet, despite his initial reluctance, Minato knew he had to power through. With a renewed sense of determination, he picked up his pen and began to tackle the task at hand. Each stroke of his pen was like a battle cry, a defiant act against the bureaucratic forces that threatened to consume him. As the hours ticked by, Minato found himself lost in a whirlwind of paperwork and imagination. In his mind's eye, he envisioned himself as a lone gunslinger in the wild west of the corporate world, his pen mightier than any six-shooter. Each signature he scribbled was a bullet fired against the enemy, a declaration of his unwavering commitment to justice and order. Minato's antics did not go unnoticed by the Anbu Black Ops team, who silently observed their Hokage's theatrics from the shadows. Though they tried their best to maintain their stoic professionalism, it was a struggle to stifle their laughter at the absurdity of Minato's imagined battles against the dreaded paperwork. As the night wore on, Minato's resolve only grew stronger. He began to see the paperwork not as a burden, but as a secret weapon, a means to conquer the forces of bureaucracy that threatened to undermine the village's well-being. With each form he completed, he felt a sense of victory, a reminder that even the most mundane tasks could be imbued with purpose and meaning. Finally, after what seemed like an eternity, Minato emerged victorious. He stood tall, his pen held aloft like a sword, having vanquished the foe that had threatened to consume him. Minato sighed deeply as he finished the last piece of paperwork, throwing his pen down triumphantly. Finally, that's done, he exclaimed with a satisfied smirk. He leaned back in his chair, taking a moment to stretch his stiff muscles. Being the Hokage was no easy task, and the never-ending pile of paperwork was a constant reminder of that. I don't know how Lord Third managed to pull off the sorcery day in and day out, Minato said, shaking his head in disbelief. He had gained a newfound respect for his predecessor, who had handled the workload with such efficiency and grace. Just as Minato was about to indulge in a well-deserved break, Nico Anbu appeared before him, her voice laced with urgency. Hokage-sama, I have just received information that a large chakra signature has been detected at the main gate. Minato's brow furrowed as he absorbed this information. He knew all too well the potential dangers that a powerful chakra presence within the village walls could pose. What do you know about this individual? He asked, his tone serious and commanding. Nico Anbu relayed the details she had gathered through her keen senses. He appears to be 5'9" tall and male, roughly around Menma's and Mito's age, she stated with precision. Minato nodded, processing the information carefully. His mind raced with possible scenarios and outcomes for this unexpected visitor. However, he remained outwardly calm and composed, not wanting to show any signs of worry or panic in front of his subordinates. After a moment of contemplation, Minato spoke in a firm voice, very well. Bring this individual to me immediately. Nico Anbu bowed respectfully before disappearing in a blur, heading towards the main gate to fulfill her Hokage's orders. As he waited for her return, Minato couldn't help but wonder who this mysterious person could be and what their intentions were for coming to Konoha at such a crucial time. But regardless of their identity or motives, one thing was certain: they would soon face the legendary fourth Hokage himself, and he would ensure the safety of his village at all costs. Minato leaned back against his desk, allowing himself a brief moment of respite. He let out a satisfied sigh, finally having a chance to take a break from the endless pile of paperwork that seemed to multiply before his very eyes. But alas, it was not meant to be. Just as he closed his eyes and relaxed into the comfort of his chair, more papers appeared before him like an ominous cloud, taunting him with their crisp edges and perfectly aligned margins. Unable to contain his frustration any longer, Minato let out a loud expletive that echoed through the quiet office walls. "Funk!" he yelled in frustration, startling nearby people who quickly ducked behind their cubicle walls. Could this day get any worse? Just when he thought he had caught up on all his tasks and could finally enjoy some downtime, fate decided to play another cruel joke on poor Minato. He couldn't help but laugh at the absurdity of it all. Here he was, thinking about taking a break, and instead, he found himself buried under even more work. Well played, universe, well played indeed. It looked like it was going to be another long night for the dear Hokage. Time skip. Konoha's main gate. Two young shinobi stood guard at Konoha's main gate, their expressions betraying the boredom they felt. Izumo, with tousled brown hair partially obscuring his dark eyes, let out an exasperated sigh. "This is so funking boring," he grumbled, leaning back in his chair. Itetsu, his spiky black hair and the bandage across his nose giving him a rugged appearance, nodded in agreement. "Tell me about it," he replied, his eyes scanning the empty path leading into the village. "When are we going to see some action around here?" Despite their seemingly mundane task, the two Chunin had been carefully selected for their roles as gatekeepers. Their qualifications, including experience, skills, and ability to remain vigilant, had been thoroughly evaluated to ensure they were the most suitable candidates for the job. As the first line of defense, their responsibility was to maintain a watchful eye over everyone entering and leaving Konoha, ensuring the village's security remained intact. It was a role that required unwavering focus and attention to detail, traits that Izumo and Kitetsu possessed in abundance. Yet, on this particular day, the lack of activity had lulled them into a state of restlessness. Izumo drummed his fingers on the desk, his mind wandering to the excitement of high-ranking missions they had yet to experience. Kitetsu, too, found himself longing for a more challenging assignment. He knew that as Chunin, their opportunities for action were limited, but a part of him couldn't help but crave the thrill of a true shinobi adventure. As they sat there, their idle chatter filling the silence, a figure emerged from the distance, approaching the gates with purposeful strides. Izumo's eyes narrowed, and he nudged Kitetsu, prompting him to sit upright and adopt a more alert stance. The newcomer's attire was striking, a kimono adorned with bold hues of black, red, and gold, colors that commanded attention and exuded an aura of authority. As the figure drew closer, Izumo and Kitetsu couldn't help but feel a sense of curiosity mingled with caution. "This place has remained unchanged," the stranger remarked, their voice carrying a hint of familiarity that neither Izumo nor Kitetsu could quite place. Izumo stepped forward, his posture rigid and his expression stern. "Hold," he called out, his tone authoritative yet respectful. "State your name and purpose here, sir." The figure turned to face them fully, and in that moment, they caught a glimpse of a pair of piercing eyes that seemed to hold a depth of experience beyond their years. "My name is Kagami Naruto," the stranger announced, their voice unwavering. "And I am here to see the Hokage." Kitetsu's eyes grew wide as the realization hit him. Could this mysterious figure be the Hokage's long-lost son? Naruto had been missing for years and seemingly vanished without a trace. Yet, here stood a young man dressed in regal garments, exuding an aura of familiarity that tugged at Kitetsu's memories. Izumo, too, seemed bewildered by the situation unfolding before them. "The Hokage's son," he muttered, his brow furrowed in confusion. "But he's been gone for so long." The stranger's eyes softened at the mention of his father, and he spoke with a calm assurance. "Yes, I am the Hokage's son, Naruto. After many years of wandering, I have returned to Konoha." A palpable silence hung in the air as Kitetsu and Izumo exchanged glances, their expressions a mix of shock and relief. For years, the village had been abuzz with speculation surrounding the Hokage's missing child, and now, it seemed, the prodigal son had finally come home. Before either of them could utter another word, a squad of Anbu materialized, led by the masked figure of Nico. Her gaze fell upon Naruto, and she spoke with an authority that broke no argument. "Kagami Naruto. The Hokage requests your presence." Naruto inclined his head respectfully. "Okay. Thank you, Anbu-san," he replied, his voice tinged with gratitude. Nico acknowledged his response with a curt nod before gesturing for Naruto to follow. The elite squad moved with silent efficiency, their footsteps barely whispering across the ground as they made their way toward the Hokage's office. Kitetsu watched them depart, his mind whirling with 1,000 unanswered questions. Who was this Naruto, really? What had he been through during his years away from the village? And what would his return mean for Konoha? Only time would tell, but one thing was certain: the landscape of the village was about to change in ways they could scarcely imagine. Time skip. Hokage office. As they approached the towering Hokage tower, Nico Anbu swiftly opened the door, ushering Naruto inside with a firm yet respectful gesture. The young man couldn't help but feel a mixture of nervousness and anticipation coursing through his veins as he stepped into the room where pivotal decisions were made for the entire village. Behind a sturdy oak desk sat Minato, his eyes fixated on the documents before him. Sensing their arrival, he raised his gaze, a warm smile spreading across his features upon locking eyes with Naruto. "Ah, Naruto," he greeted, a hint of amusement laced in his voice. "I'm glad you could make it." Naruto responded with a deep, respectful bow before approaching the desk, his footsteps echoing softly against the hardwood floor. "You requested my presence, Hokage-sama?" he inquired, his tone laced with curiosity. Minato observed as a myriad of emotions flickered across Naruto's expression, from determination to sadness. He could see the weight of his own words sinking in, and it pained him to know that he had caused such anguish to his own flesh and blood. "So your training in the spirit world is finally complete?" Minato asked, attempting to break the heavy silence that had settled between them. His eyes searched Naruto's face intently, hoping to find reassurance that he had made amends with his son. Naruto nodded slowly, still processing the whirlwind of experiences he had endured during his time in the spirit world. He mumbled, adding mentally, so the old toad told him about the avatar and the spirit world as well. "Yes, Hokage-sama," Naruto finally spoke up after a brief pause, his voice steady and resolute. "And I'm also here to take the academy graduation exam," he continued, shifting his weight nervously from one foot to the other. Minato's brow furrowed with concern as he regarded his son. "Are you sure you're ready for this?" he asked, his paternal instincts kicking in. He was well aware of the immense pressure placed upon young ninja like Naruto, expected to pass their exams and prove themselves worthy of becoming full-fledged shinobi. "I'm sure," Naruto replied, his tone brimming with confidence. He was determined not to let anything hold him back any longer. "Okay then," Minato said with a small, reassuring smile. "Head over to the academy and you will find your teacher waiting for you." "Thank you so much, Hokage-sama," Naruto bowed respectfully before turning towards the door, ready to embark on the next phase of his journey. But just as he reached for the handle, Minato's voice called out, causing him to pause. "Son, wait." Naruto turned around curiously, meeting his father's intense gaze head-on. "I'm sorry for all the pain that me and your mother have caused you," Minato sighed, the weight of those words hanging heavily in the air between them as they both recalled past events filled with regret and sorrow. Naruto's eyes softened as he looked upon his father, a myriad of emotions swirling within him. He could see that Minato was genuinely trying to make amends, and he appreciated the effort. "I know," Naruto said, his voice shaking slightly with emotion. "But I won't forget." With those parting words, Naruto turned and closed the door behind him, leaving Minato standing alone in his office. As he made his way towards the academy, Naruto couldn't help but feel a sense of closure and forgiveness wash over him. He may never fully understand or accept what had happened in the past, but he was willing to move forward and create a better future for himself. And with his training in the spirit world complete, he felt more determined than ever to become a strong ninja and protect those who were important to him. As for Minato, he watched his son leave with a mixture of pride and sadness in his heart. He knew there was still much mending to be done between them, but seeing Naruto grow into such a resilient individual gave him hope that they could one day have a true family relationship. For now, though, both father and son were ready to face whatever challenges lay ahead as they continued on their paths towards redemption and reconciliation. Narrator. The Ninja Academy, nestled in the imposing shadow of the Hokage statues, pulses like the very heart of Konoha, a heart fueled by the dreams of its youthful students. Within the unpretentious walls of its classrooms, the bedrock philosophies of the shinobi way are instilled in each new generation, preparing them for the trials that will one day test their mettle. The hallowed halls of the library hold centuries of whispered wisdom, echoes of long-forgotten jutsu, and the storied annals of the shinobi clans. And on the sun-drenched training grounds, the village's future takes shape as fledgling ninja spar with fire in their eyes, each bout a crucible forging them anew, their sensei's watchful gaze ever present as they inch closer to the moment they'll take their place among the ranks of the Konoha shinobi. Among the Ninja Academy's classrooms, one stands out, a room filled with the offspring of Konoha's most esteemed clans. These young heirs, bearing the weight of their family names, sit with a quiet "shut the hell up. You damned brats. Seriously, if I get interrupted one more time, I'm outta here. I didn't sign up for professional interruption specialist at these wages. Screw the coffee mug, it's not that fulfilling." Narrator's voice wobbled between a laugh and a growl as he did the angry iguana pace around the teeny room. A few minutes later. "I'm sorry about our minor inconvenience, but I had to do this. Now, let's get back to the story." The narrator's voice shook with sarcasm as he finished his sentence. "Break." A shout echoed through the classroom, coming from none other than their teacher, Haruka Yamino. Iruka was an unassuming man, of average height and build, with brown hair pulled back into a ponytail. His dark eyes twinkled with a knowing glint, and a scar bisected the bridge of his nose, a souvenir from his rough-and-tumble youth. Like any proud Konoha shinobi, he wore the standard-issue uniform, complete with a forehead protector, sandals, and a flak jacket. His sleeves were rolled up about a quarter of the way, revealing a hint of the mesh armor underneath. Iruka might be compassed at times, but you often put yourself in his place in a room full of wild teenagers, and you'd get annoyed with the situation. He is constantly pushing buttons and testing limits, even the patience of someone as mellow as Iruka gets worn thin by the antics of his boisterous students. The narrator said. When I call your name, I want you to say here. Clear? Iruka's voice rang out, cutting through the chatter like a kunai slicing through the air. The chorus of yes, sensei. Echoed across the classroom, though the enthusiasm varied from student to student. Iruka nodded, his gaze sweeping across the rows of desks. Inyazuka Kiba. Here. A boisterous voice called out, belonging to a wild-haired boy with distinctive red fang markings on his cheeks. Beside him, a small puppy yapped excitedly from atop his messy mop of hair. Iruka raised an eyebrow but continued down the list. Nara Shikamaru. The lazy groan answered him. Here in the back row, a lanky boy with a pineapple-shaped ponytail slouched in his seat, eyes already half-lidded with boredom. Yamanaka Ino. Haruno Sakura. Here. Two voices chimed in unison, belonging to a pair of girls sitting side by side. One had long, sleek blonde hair tied up in a high ponytail, while the other sported a vibrant pink shade that was not natural. They exchanged a brief glare, clearly rivals in some unspoken competition. Sasuke Uchiha. HMPH. That was only his response. His obsidian eyes, framed by long, dark lashes, seemed to pierce through everyone he looked at, carrying an intensity far beyond his years. Raven locks danced across his forehead, the blue tint in his hair catching the sunlight streaming through the windows, giving it an almost ethereal glow. Despite his aloof behavior, there was an undeniable magnetism about him that drew the attention of everyone in the room, particularly the girls. Ino and Sakura, who had been exchanging glares just moments ago, now found themselves stealing furtive glances at the brooding Uchiha. Sakura's cheeks flushed ever so slightly. As expected of Sasuke-kun, Sakura whispered dreamily, her voice carrying just enough for Ino to hear. A faint blush crept across her cheeks as she stole another glance at the brooding Uchiha, her eyes lingering on his raven locks and intense gaze. Ino shot her a withering glare, her lips curling into a pout. What's so great about him, anyway? He's just a broody loner. She tossed her long, blonde ponytail over her shoulder, her eyes narrowing as she studied Sasuke's aloof demeanor. Sakura whipped her head around, her eyes blazing with indignation. Are you kidding me, Ino pig? She hissed, her voice low but laced with venom. Sasuke-kun is the most talented and coolest guy in our class. He's a Uchiha, for crying out loud. Ino scoffed, rolling her eyes dramatically. Talented, sure. But cool. He's so full of himself and acts like he's better than everyone else. She leaned back in her chair, crossing her arms defiantly. If you ask me, he's just a stuck-up jerk. Sakura's jaw dropped, incredulous at her friend's words. Take that back, Ino pig. She snapped, her fists clenching at her sides. You're just jealous because Sasuke-kun doesn't even look your way. Ino's eyes flashed with anger, and she was about to retort when a sharp voice cut through their argument. Haruno. Yamanaka. Iruka barked, his gaze fixed on the two bickering girls. If you two are quite done disrupting my class, perhaps we can move on. Sakura and Ino froze, their cheeks flushing with embarrassment as they realized the entire class was now staring at them. Mumbling apologies, they sank back into their seats, shooting one last glare at each other before turning their attention back to Iruka. Iruka continued calling out names from his list. Shino Aburami. Here, a monotone voice responded from the back row, where a boy with a high collar and dark sunglasses sat impassively. His face was mostly obscured, but one could make out the faint outline of his lips as he spoke. Menma Namikaze. Iruka called out. Here, Menma responded, his voice tinged with a hint of sullenness. Heads turned in his direction, and whispers rippled through the classroom as the girls openly admired his striking features. Menma leaned back in his chair, his unruly blonde locks cascading down his back in a wild mane. His vivid cerulean eyes sparkled with a mischievous glint, hinting at the boundless energy and curiosity that bubbled beneath the surface. His features were sharp and angular, bearing an uncanny resemblance to his father, the esteemed Hokage. Isn't Menma so dreamy? One girl whispered to her friend, her eyes fixed on the young Namikaze. Totally, her friend giggled in response. Those eyes and that hair, he's like a real-life Prince Charming. Menma overheard the whispers and flashed a beepy grin in their direction, running a hand through his golden locks. The girls blushed furiously and quickly averted their gazes, whispering and giggling amongst themselves. Mito Uzumaki. Haruka called out, moving on to the next name. "Here," a melodic voice responded, and all eyes turned towards the crimson-haired beauty. Mito sat with impeccable posture, her long, silky tresses cascading in waves over her shoulders. Her delicate features were accentuated by the mesmerizing violet hue of her eyes, which seemed to command respect and attention from all those around her. There was a certain regal quality to her demeanor, a commanding presence that was both alluring and intimidating. The boys in the class couldn't help but steal glances in her direction, captivated by her beauty and grace. Whispers and hushed murmurs filled the air as they admired her from afar. "Man, Mito is so gorgeous," one boy muttered under his breath, his eyes lingering on her for a moment too long. "Yeah, but she's way out of our league," his friend replied wistfully. "A girl like that would never give us the time of day." Mito seemed oblivious to the admiring glances and whispers, her focus unwavering as she waited for Haruka to continue with the roll call. "That's some bull, Haruka-sensei." Kiba exclaimed loudly, his sharp canine teeth bared in frustration. "How come we sit through your boring-ass lectures, but this person gets a free pass?" Haruka's brow furrowed as he turned his stern gaze towards the boisterous Inuzuka. "Kiba, watch your language," he chided sternly. "And what do you mean free pass? The new student will have to work just as hard as the rest of you." Kiba crossed his arms defiantly, not backing down. "Oh yeah? Then why are they joining us so late? Seems like special treatment to me." Beside him, Shikamaru let out a long, exasperated sigh. "Kiba, you're making a fuss over nothing. It's a drag, but even you should be able to figure out that there could be perfectly valid reasons for someone to transfer to our class." "Shikamaru's right," Haruka interjected, his gaze sweeping across the classroom. "Some of you may not know this, but the new student had extenuating circumstances that delayed their enrollment. However, they have been privately training and are well prepared to join us." Murmurs rippled through the classroom as the students exchanged curious glances, wondering what kind of extenuating circumstances would warrant such special treatment. "But that's not fair, sensei." Sakura piped up, her brow creased in frustration. "We've all been working our butts off since day one. How's it fair for this new kid to just waltz in and get a free ride?" Ino nodded vigorously in agreement, her ponytail swishing back and forth. "Forehead's got a point. If they're so well prepared, why didn't they just join us from the start?" Haruka held up his hand, quieting the growing unrest. "I understand your concerns, but I can assure you that the newcomer has earned their place here. They've had to overcome significant hardships and challenges, far beyond what most of you can imagine." The classroom fell silent, the students exchanging uncertain glances. Even Sasuke, who had been brooding silently in the back, seemed to perk up with curiosity at Haruka's words. "Enough of this," Haruka said firmly. "You'll all have a chance to meet and get to know the new student soon enough. For now, let's focus on today's lesson." As Haruka turned towards the chalkboard, the door to the classroom creaked open, and a familiar figure stepped inside. It was a young man, though his age was difficult to discern. He moved with a confident, almost regal bearing, his gaze sweeping over the students with an air of quiet assurance. He was dressed in a striking kimono, its intricate patterns of black, red, and gold seeming to dance and swirl with his every movement. The back of the kimono bore an intricate dragon motif, the outer layer emblazoned with the kanji characters representing the 5 elements, while the inner layer featured a single character mirror. As the young man strode forward, his footsteps fell with a soft, deliberate cadence, each step exuding a sense of purpose and control. His features were striking, with high cheekbones and piercing eyes that seemed to shimmer with an otherworldly quality. His crimson red hair and yellow highlights were tousled, framing his face in a way that only added to his enigmatic allure. "So, I'm in the right class," he said, his voice carrying a rich melodic timbre that instantly commanded attention. The students exchanged bewildered glances, captivated by the stranger's presence. Even Haruka seemed taken aback, his mouth slightly agape as he took in the young man's appearance. Sasuke, ever the stoic, narrowed his eyes, studying the newcomer with an intense gaze. There was something about this stranger that piqued his curiosity, a subtle undercurrent of power that he couldn't quite put his finger on. Menma, on the other hand, leaned back in his chair, his eyebrows raised in a mixture of curiosity and amusement. A beefy smirk played on his lips as he appraised the newcomer as if sizing up a potential rival. Mito, ever the regal beauty, maintained her composure, though her violet eyes sparkled with interest as she took in the stranger's appearance. Ino and Sakura, their earlier quarrel forgotten, found themselves openly gaping at the young man, their cheeks flushed with a mixture of admiration and embarrassment. As the silence stretched on, the young man's gaze swept over the classroom once more, lingering on each student for a brief moment before settling on Haruka. "I believe you were expecting me, sensei," he said, his voice carrying a subtle undercurrent of confidence that seemed to fill the room. "Yeah, come in and introduce yourself," Haruka said, motioning for the newcomer to step forward. The figure strode to the front of the class, his movements fluid and graceful, yet brimming with an understated power. He turned to face the students, his piercing gaze sweeping over them with an intensity that seemed to command their undivided attention. "My name is Kagami Naruto," he said, his voice resonating through the classroom with a rich, melodic timbre. Gasps and murmurs rippled through the students as they exchanged bewildered glances. Menma's eyes widened, his beefy smirk faltering as he stared at Naruto in disbelief. Mito's composure slipped for a moment, her delicate features etched with surprise. "Nai-san," Menma whispered under his breath, his brow furrowing as he studied Naruto's striking appearance. "Nai-chan." Mito mouthed silently, her violet eyes fixed on her long-estranged brother. The siblings had not seen Naruto in years, not since their parents had cast him aside, deeming him unworthy of their attention. Memories of that painful day of Naruto's disappearance flooded back, and a myriad of emotions flickered across their faces: shock, longing, and a hint of guilt. Sasuke leaned forward, his obsidian eyes narrowing as he regarded Naruto with a mix of curiosity and suspicion. There was something about this newcomer that piqued his interest, a subtle undercurrent of power that seemed to radiate from him like an unseen force. Sakura and Ino, their petty rivalry forgotten for the moment, found themselves captivated by Naruto's enigmatic presence. They exchanged a glance, their cheeks flushed with a mixture of admiration and bewilderment. "He's Naruto?" Sakura whispered, her eyes wide as she took in his striking features and regal bearing. Ino nodded slowly, her gaze fixed on Naruto with an intensity that bordered on awe. "I had no idea he was like this," she murmured, her voice barely audible. Hiba, ever the brash one, let out a bark of laughter, breaking the tense silence that had fallen over the classroom. "No way," he exclaimed, his sharp canine teeth bared in a wolfish grin. "This guy can't be the same Naruto we used to know. The loser whose parents wouldn't even train him." Beside him, Akamaru let out a high-pitched yap, as if echoing his master's disbelief. Shikamaru, ever the bipedical one, studied Naruto with a newfound interest, his brow furrowed in contemplation. "Looks can be deceiving, Kiba," he murmured, his voice low, but carrying a hint of respect. "There's more to this guy than meets the eye." Naruto remained impassive, his gaze sweeping over the students with a calm, unflinching demeanor. When his eyes met those of Menma and Mito, a flicker of emotion passed across his features, but it was gone in an instant, replaced by a mask of serene imperturbability. "It has been a long time, Menma, Mito," he said, his voice carrying a subtly formal tone that seemed at odds with their familial relationship. "I trust you have been well." Menma opened his mouth to respond, but the words seemed to catch in his throat. He swallowed hard, his eyes flickering with a mixture of emotions: surprise, guilt, and a hint of resentment. Mito took a deep breath, compassing herself before addressing her long-lost brother. Despite a regal upbringing, she couldn't completely mask the hint of longing in her violet eyes as she gazed upon Naruto's striking figure. "It is good to see you again, Nai-chan," she said, her melodic voice wavering ever so slightly. "You've certainly changed." Naruto met her gaze, his expression inscrutable. "Indeed, it has been a long and arduous journey. One that has shaped me into the person I am today." Menma, seemingly jolted from his stupor, found his voice at last. "Where have you been all this time, Nai-san?" He blurted out, his brow furrowed in a mix of confusion and residual resentment. "Mom and Dad said you were gone, but they never told us why." A flicker of emotion passed across Naruto's features, but it was gone in an instant, replaced by a mask of calm detachment. "That is a long and complex tale, one that I shall share with you both in due time," he replied, his voice carrying a hint of distrust. "For now, let us focus on the present." Iruka, sensing the tension in the air, cleared his throat loudly. "Yes, well, as you can see, Naruto has returned to us after his disappearance," he said, his gaze sweeping over the bewildered students. "I trust you'll all make him feel welcome and help him settle in." Kiba snorted, leaning back in his chair with a skeptical expression. "Welcome him back, my ass." Sakura shot him a withering glare, her temper flaring. "Shut up, Kiba. You're just jealous because Naruto is so." Her voice trailed off as she stole another glance at the enigmatic young man, her cheeks flushing slightly. Ino, ever the perceptive one, picked up on Sakura's unspoken thoughts. "Handsome. Mysterious. Totally unlike the knucklehead we used to know," she teased, shooting a sly grin at her rival. Sakura's blush deepened, and she opened her mouth to retort, but Naruto's calm voice cut through their bickering. "I appreciate your concern, but there's no need for such hostility," he said, his gaze sweeping over the students with a serene placidity. "I harbor no ill will towards any of you, and I hope we can move forward with open minds and hearts." A hush fell over the classroom as the students found themselves captivated by Naruto's words and presence. Even Sasuke, ever the stoic, couldn't help but feel a grudging respect for the newcomer's poise and confidence. Naruto turned to Iruka, inclining his head respectfully. "If it pleases you, sensei, can I take my seat and you can start the graduation exam?" Iruka nodded, his expression softening slightly. Of course, Naruto. Please take a seat. He gestured towards the empty desk in the front row. As Naruto made his way to the vacant seat, the classroom erupted into a flurry of whispers and murmurs. Kiba leaned over to Shikamaru, his voice low but laced with skepticism. Can you believe this guy? Acting all high and mighty like he's some kind of big shot. Shikamaru merely shrugged, his expression bored as usual. Who knows? Maybe he's got some skills to back it up. As Naruto took his seat, the classroom fell silent, all eyes fixed on him with a mix of fascination and apprehension. He met their gazes evenly, his expression serene and impassive. Iruka cleared his throat, drawing the students' attention back to the front of the room. Alright, class. As you know, today is the graduation exam. This exam will test your skills and knowledge in various areas of ninja training, including ninjutsu, taijutsu, and genjutsu. He paused, his gaze sweeping over the students' faces. I know many of you have worked hard and prepared diligently for this day. But remember, even if you don't pass this time, there will be future opportunities to become a full-fledged shinobi. Iba scoffed, crossing his arms over his chest. Speak for yourself, sensei. I'm gonna ace this exam and become a ninja today, no doubt about it. Come on, Kiba, don't act so high and mighty, Shikamaru drawled, his voice laced with a hint of lazy amusement. You might talk a big game, but we all know you're the dead last in our class. Iba's eyes narrowed, his sharp canine teeth baring in a wolfish grin. Watch it, Shikamaru, he growled, his voice low but carrying a playful edge. Just because you're a lazy genius doesn't mean you can look down on me. Beside him, Akamaru let out a series of high-pitched yaps, as if echoing his master's sentiments. Shikamaru merely shrugged, his expression one of practiced nonchalance. I'm just stating facts, Kiba. No need to get all worked up about it. Iruka couldn't help but chuckle at Kiba's bravado. We'll see about that, Kiba. Just don't get too overconfident. He turned to Naruto, his expression growing more serious. Naruto, since you're new to the class, I want you to understand the importance of this exam. It's not just a formality, it's a true test of your skills and dedication. Naruto met Iruka's gaze evenly, his expression unreadable. I understand, sensei. I'm ready to prove myself. Iruka nodded, seeming satisfied with Naruto's response. Very well. Let's begin with the written portion of the exam. As Iruka began distributing the test papers, the tension in the classroom was palpable. Each student knew that this was their chance to prove themselves worthy of becoming a ninja, and the stakes were high. I'm just going to skip the written exam portion because I'm lazy and it's boring as hell. Honestly, I can't be bothered to sit through hours of tedious questions that don't interest me in the slightest. It's not like I can't or anything, but the thought of spending my time on something so mind-numbingly dull just doesn't appeal to me. I'd rather focus on the practical parts that engage me and seem worthwhile. 1 hour later, the written exam was over. Iruka picked up all the papers and told the students to meet him outside at the training grounds. As the students filed out of the classroom and made their way towards the training grounds, Naruto lingered behind the other students. Also, I am going to skip the kunai and shuriken exams as well. Alright, everyone, Iruka announced, his voice carrying across the training grounds. It's time for the sparring matches. These will test your taijutsu skills and your ability to think on your feet. Kiba grinned wolfishly, cracking his knuckles. Finally, some action. I've been itching for a good fight. Beside him, Akamaru yapped excitedly, sensing his master's eagerness. Ino rolled her eyes, flipping her long ponytail over her shoulder. Just don't get too excited, Kiba. You might hurt yourself. Kiba shot her a glare, but before he could retort, Iruka called out the first pair of combatants. Sakura Haruno and Menma Namikaze, you're up first. Sakura's eyes widened, and she exchanged a nervous glance with Menma. The son of the Hokage was known to be one of the most talented students in their class, and she couldn't help but feel a flutter of anxiety in her stomach. Menma, for his part, flashed her a beepy grin as they stepped onto the sparring mat. Don't worry, Sakura-chan. I'll go easy on you. Sakura bristled at his condescending tone, her competitive spirit flaring up. Don't underestimate me, Menma Baka. I'm not some delicate flower. With that, she lunged forward, lashing out with a series of quick strikes and kicks. Menma's eyes widened in surprise, and he was forced to backpedal, blocking and dodging her blows with increasing difficulty. Whoa, Sakura-chan. Since when did you get so feisty? He exclaimed, narrowly avoiding a punch that grazed his cheek. Sakura didn't respond, her brow furrowed in concentration as she pressed her attack. Menma couldn't help but admire her determination, even as he began to counter her strikes with his own. The two traded blows, their movements becoming a blur of limbs and flashes of chakra. Sakura's strikes were precise and controlled, while Menma's style was more fluid and unpredictable. In the end, though, Menma's superior speed and stamina proved to be the deciding factor. He feinted to the left, then spun around Sakura's guard, sweeping her legs out from under her in one smooth motion. Sakura hit the mat with a grunt, her chest heaving from exertion. Menma stood over her, a triumphant grin on his face. "Not bad, Sakura-chan," he said, offering her a hand up. "You've definitely improved." Sakura accepted his hand, her cheeks flushed with a mixture of embarrassment and pride. "Thanks, Menma-kun. You're still a pain in the ass, though." Menma chuckled, his eyes sparkling with amusement. "Wouldn't have it any other way." As the two made their way off the mat, Iruka called out the next pair of combatants. "Shikamaru, Nara and Kiba and Yuzuka, you're up." Kiba whooped, pumping his fist in the air. "Finally, my turn. Get ready to taste dirt, Shikamaru." Shikamaru sighed, his expression one of utter boredom. "What a drag," he muttered, shuffling onto the mat with his hands shoved in his pockets. Kiba wasted no time, charging at Shikamaru with Akamaru at his side. The two moved in perfect sync, their attacks coordinated and relentless. Shikamaru, however, seemed unfazed. He dodged and weaved, his movements minimal and efficient, as if he were expending the least possible effort. "Come on, Shikamaru." Ino called out from the sidelines. "Stop being so lazy and fight back." Shikamaru shot her an annoyed glance, but his focus quickly returned to the fight as Kiba's fist came whistling towards his face. With a deft movement, Shikamaru sidestepped the blow, spinning around behind Kiba and delivering a well-placed kick to the back of his knee. Kiba's leg buckled and he stumbled, leaving himself wide open. In a flash, Shikamaru had him pinned, his arm twisted behind his back in a textbook submission hold. "I win," Shikamaru said, his voice tinged with smugness. Kiba growled in frustration, struggling against Shikamaru's grip. "That was a cheap shot." Shikamaru released him, shrugging nonchalantly. "If you say so." As Kiba stalked off the mat, muttering curses under his breath, Iruka called out the next pair. "Sasuke Uchiha and Kagami Naruto, you're up." A hush fell over the training grounds as the two combatants made their way onto the mat. Sasuke's face was a mask of cool determination, while Naruto's expression remained serene and impassive. Ino and Sakura exchanged excited glances, their earlier rivalry forgotten as they eagerly awaited the match between the two most enigmatic students in their class. "This is going to be good," Ino whispered, her eyes shining with anticipation. Sakura nodded, her gaze fixed on Sasuke's lithe form. "Just watch, Ino pig. Sasuke-kun is going to wipe the floor with him." Ino scoffed, tossing her ponytail over her shoulder. "We'll see about that, forehead." On the mat, Sasuke and Naruto faced each other, their stances poised and ready. There was a palpable tension in the air, a sense of two titans about to clash. Sasuke was the first to move, launching himself forward with a burst of speed that caught even Naruto off guard. His strikes were precise and relentless, each one aimed at vital points with lethal precision. Naruto, however, seemed to anticipate each blow, his movements fluid and graceful as he deflected and parried Sasuke's attacks. It was like watching a dance, each combatant perfectly in sync with the other's movements. Sasuke's brow furrowed in frustration as his strikes continued to be effortlessly countered. He redoubled his efforts, his movements becoming more aggressive and unpredictable. Naruto, however, remained unfazed, his expression one of calm focus. He shifted his stance ever so slightly, and suddenly, Sasuke found himself on the defensive. A flurry of strikes rained down upon him, each one precise and carefully calculated. Sasuke's eyes widened as he struggled to keep up, his breath coming in ragged gasps. "Impossible," he muttered, gritting his teeth as he blocked a particularly vicious blow. Naruto didn't respond, his movements continuing with a fluid grace that seemed almost effortless. In the end, it was a well-timed feint that caught Sasuke off guard. Naruto shifted his weight, drawing Sasuke's attention to his right, then struck with lightning speed, his palm slamming into Sasuke's chest with controlled force. Sasuke flew backwards, hitting the mat with a dull thud. He lay there, stunned, his eyes wide with disbelief. Naruto stood over him, his expression calm and unruffled. "You fought well, Sasuke," he said, his voice carrying a hint of respect. "But you still have much to learn." With that, he turned and walked off the mat, leaving a stunned silence in his wake. Ino and Sakura exchanged wide-eyed glances, their mouths hanging open in shock. Neither of them could quite believe what they had just witnessed. "Did Naruto just beat Sasuke-kun?" Sakura whispered, her voice trembling with disbelief. Ino could only nod mutely, her eyes still fixed on Naruto's retreating form. As the shock began to wear off, murmurs and whispers rippled through the gathered students, each one speculating and debating what they had just seen. Time skip. Inside the classroom. After the sparring matches. As the day wore on, the students continued to showcase their skills, each match more intense than the last. But it was clear that Naruto's victory over Sasuke had shaken the foundations of the class, revealing a hidden prodigy in their midst. Kiba stepped forward, his fingers forming the hand seals with practiced ease. "Bunshin no jutsu," he exclaimed, and a puff of smoke erupted around him. When it cleared, 4 imperfect clones stood beside him, their forms slightly distorted and hazy. Iruka frowned, jotting down notes on his clipboard. "Not bad, Kiba, but your clones still lack stability. Keep practicing." Kiba scowled but nodded, dispelling the clones with a wave of his hand. Next up was Shikamaru, who performed the jutsu with a lazy flick of his wrists. His clones were solid and well-formed, but their expressions matched his own bored countenance. "Adequate," Iruka commented, making a few notes. Ino and Sakura both executed the technique flawlessly, their clones perfect replicas of themselves. They exchanged smug grins, basking in their success. Sasuke, as expected, performed the jutsu with effortless grace, his clones so lifelike that they seemed to radiate an aura of power. Iruka nodded approvingly, though his expression remained impassive. As the demonstrations continued, Menma and Mito both showcased their prodigious talent, their jutsu executed with precision and finesse. The other students watched in awe, whispers of admiration rippling through the crowd. Finally, it was Naruto's turn. He stepped forward, his movements fluid and unhurried. Closing his eyes, he began forming hand seals at a rapid pace, his fingers blurring with speed. The air around him seemed to crackle with energy, and the ground beneath his feet trembled ever so slightly. Iruka's brow furrowed, and he opened his mouth to speak, but the words died on his lips as Naruto completed the final seal. "Elemental clone," Naruto murmured, his voice carrying a weight that seemed to reverberate through the very air around him. Suddenly, 2 swirling vortexes of energy manifested on either side of Naruto, one a brilliant, scorching white flame, and the other a mesmerizing vortex of obsidian black fire. The students gasped in awe, their eyes wide with disbelief and a hint of fear. Even Iruka seemed taken aback, his clipboard slipping from his grasp as he stared at the incredible display. From the heart of the white flames, a figure began to take shape, a perfect replica of Naruto, every detail replicated down to the last strand of golden hair. The clone's eyes burned with an intense, ethereal light, as if fueled by the very essence of the fire itself. At the same time, a second Naruto emerged from the swirling vortex of black flames, its form darker and more ominous, yet no less striking. The black fire seemed to cling to the clone's skin, casting flickering shadows across its features. Finally, Naruto opened his eyes, and the vortexes of fire dissipated in an instant, leaving only the clone standing before the stunned audience. Even Iruka seemed at a loss for words, his mouth hanging open as he took in the incredible display of skill and power. With a flick of his wrist, the clones dissipated, their forms dispersing into wisps of smoke that quickly faded into nothingness. "I trust that will suffice, Iruka-sensei," he said, his voice carrying a hint of amusement. Iruka could only nod mutely, still reeling from the stunning demonstration. As Naruto rejoined his classmates, whispers and murmurs filled the air, a mixture of awe and trepidation. "How did he? That's impossible. Who is this guy?" Finally, after hours of sparring and demonstrations, Iruka gathered the students before him, his expression solemn. "You've all worked hard and shown great dedication," he said, his gaze sweeping over the exhausted but determined faces before him. "But as you know, not everyone can pass the exam and become a genin." A hush fell over the group, each student holding their breath in anticipation. Iruka paused for effect before continuing. "However, this year, I'm proud to say that every single one of you has met the requirements to graduate and become full-fledged shinobi of Konohagakure." The collective cheer erupted from the students, their faces lighting up with joy and relief. Kiba let out a whoop of excitement, while Shikamaru simply shook his head, a faint smile tugging at his lips. Ino and Sakura embraced each other, their earlier rivalry forgotten in the moment of celebration. Even Sasuke allowed a small smile to grace his features, though his eyes still burned with determination. Naruto stood apart from the others, his expression calm and serene. But there was a glimmer of pride in his eyes as he watched his classmates rejoice. Iruka waited for the cheers to die down before speaking again. "Congratulations, all of you. You've earned the right to wear the headband of a Konoha shinobi." He gestured to a table laden with forehead protectors, each one bearing the iconic leaf symbol of their village. "Come forward and claim your headbands," Iruka said, a warm smile spreading across his face. One by one, the students approached the table, their faces alight with pride and excitement as they donned the coveted headbands. Naruto was the last to step forward, his movements measured and graceful. He picked up a headband, running his fingers over the cool metal emblem before tying it securely around his forehead. As he turned to face his classmates, a hush fell over the group. Naruto's striking features seemed even more pronounced, his piercing eyes framed by the sleek black fabric of the headband. Menma and Mito exchanged glances, a mixture of emotions flickering across their faces. Pride for their brother's accomplishment mingled with a lingering sense of guilt and uncertainty. Sasuke regarded Naruto with a newfound respect, his obsidian eyes burning with a renewed determination to surpass this newfound rival. Sakura and Ino were speechless, their cheeks flushed as they took in Naruto's imposing figure. He looked every inch the powerful shinobi, a far cry from the outcast they had known in their childhood. Iruka cleared his throat, drawing the attention of the newly minted genin. Congratulations once again, all of you. You've taken the first step on a long and challenging journey, but I do not doubt that you will make Konoha proud. He paused, his gaze sweeping over the group one last time. Enjoy this moment, but remember the real work starts tomorrow. Dismissed. With that, the students erupted into cheers and celebration, their voices carrying across the training grounds and echoing through the streets of Konohagakure. Time skip. Outside the academy, a crowd had gathered, eagerly awaiting the emergence of the newly minted genin. Parents, clan leaders, and villagers alike shared in the palpable excitement, their faces alight with pride and anticipation. At the forefront of the throng stood Minato Namikaze, the esteemed Hokage himself, his arm draped around the shoulders of his wife, Kushina. Their expressions were a study in contrast. Minato's features were etched with a serene, paternal pride, while Kushina practically vibrated with barely contained enthusiasm. "Our kids did it, Minato," she exclaimed, her violet eyes sparkling with joy. "They're officially shinobi now." Minato chuckled, his gaze sweeping over the gathered crowd. "Indeed, my love. And judging by the turnout, it seems the entire village shares in our pride." Beside them stood the imposing figures of Hiashi Hyuga and Tsume Inuzuka, their expressions stoic yet tinged with a hint of parental affection. Hiashi's pale eyes narrowed ever so slightly as he scanned the crowd, while Tsume's feral grin bared her sharp canines. "Hinata, you have made the Hyuga clan proud today," Hiashi said, his voice carrying a rare note of warmth. Tsume barked out a laugh, slapping Hiashi on the back with enough force to make the Hyuga leader wince. "Of course they did. And my Kiba's gonna be the fiercest of them all, just you wait." Nearby, Inoichi and Choza stood side by side, their expressions a mix of pride and nostalgia. Inoichi's eyes shone with unshed tears as he turned to his longtime friend. "My little girl is all grown up, Choza," he said, his voice thick with emotion. "It seems like only yesterday she was running around the flower shop, getting into all sorts of mischief." Choza nodded, his booming laugh echoing across the courtyard. "Indeed, my friend. And if she's anything like this father, they'll be the most formidable Konoha shinobi you have ever seen." As the chatter and excitement reached a fever pitch, the doors to the academy swung open, and the first of the newly minted genin emerged. Cheers and applause erupted from the crowd as the students filed out, their faces flushed with pride and their forehead protectors gleaming in the sunlight. Kiba was among the first, his wolfish grin stretching from ear to ear as he rushed towards his mother. Tsume enveloped him in a bone-crushing hug, ruffling his wild hair affectionately. "That's my boy," she crowed, her eyes shining with pride. Shikamaru followed at a more leisurely pace, his hands shoved into his pockets and his expression one of feigned boredom. But even he couldn't quite hide the hint of a smile that tugged at the corners of his mouth as his parents swept him into an embrace. Ino and Sakura emerged side by side, their earlier rivalry forgotten in the face of their shared triumph. Mibuki Haruno's face lit up with pride as Sakura emerged from the academy doors, her forehead protector gleaming in the sunlight. With tears of joy glistening in her eyes, she rushed forward and enveloped her daughter in a warm, loving embrace. Sakura returned the embrace, burying her face in her mother's shoulder as she savored the moment. Inoichi Yamanaka beamed with fatherly pride, enveloping his daughter in a warm hug and showering her with congratulations. Meanwhile, his friend Choza Akimichi was squeezing the life out of Choji. While, Shibi Aburami nods at Shino also in gratitude, acknowledging his son's efforts and the silent understanding they share. Sasuke strode out with his usual stoic demeanor, but even he couldn't resist the faintest hint of a smile as he caught sight of his older brother, Itachi, waiting for him. The prodigy of the Uchiha clan offered a rare genuine smile and a nod of acknowledgement, his obsidian eyes shining with pride. Note: the Uchiha massacre never happened in this timeline. Then, at last, Menma and Mito emerged, their golden and crimson locks shining like beacons in the sunlight. Minato and Kushina rushed forward, sweeping their children into a fierce embrace, their faces alight with joy and pride. "We're so proud of you both," Minato said, his voice thick with emotion as he held his son and daughter close. Kushina, never one for restraint, peppered their faces with kisses, her eyes brimming with happy tears. "My babies, all grown up and shinobi. I could burst with pride." Menma squirmed in her embrace, his cheeks flushed with embarrassment. "Aw, Mom, cut it out," he protested, though a grin tugged at the corners of his mouth. Mito, ever the graceful one, simply basked in the warmth of her parents' affection, her violet eyes shining with happiness. But as the celebrations continued, a hush fell over the crowd as another figure emerged from the academy doors. Naruto strode forth, his striking features framed by the sleek black fabric of his forehead protector, his movements imbued with a quiet confidence that seemed to command respect. Gasps and whispers rippled through the gathered villagers as they took in the sight of the long-estranged Namikaze-san. Kushina froze, her expression a mix of shock, guilt, and a tentative glimmer of hope. Naruto's piercing gaze swept over the crowd, lingering on his parents for a heartbeat longer than the rest. A myriad of emotions flickered across his features: pain, resentment, but also a glimmer of something softer, something akin to longing. As if drawn by an invisible force, Minato and Kushina found themselves moving towards their eldest son, their footsteps tentative and hesitant. The crowd parted before them, a hush falling over the courtyard as all eyes turned towards the unfolding scene. Minato was about to speak, Naruto's words at the Hokage office ringing in his ears, so he just nodded his head instead at his oldest son. Kushina reached out, her hand trembling ever so slightly as she sought to bridge the chasm that had grown between them over the years. "My boy, you've come so far." Naruto regarded them with an inscrutable expression, his eyes shimmering with a maelstrom of emotions. For a long moment, the silence stretched taut, charged with a palpable tension that seemed to hold the entire courtyard in thrall. Then, slowly, Naruto inclined his head in a respectful nod, his features softening ever so slightly. "Mother. Father." The words hung in the air, thick with a myriad of emotions that threatened to overwhelm Naruto. As he stood before Minato and Kushina, his eyes locked with theirs, a torrent of memories came flooding back. Memories of a childhood marred by neglect and loneliness. Whispers and sideways glances from villagers who saw him as an outcast, a pariah. The bitter sting of rejection from the very people who should have loved and nurtured him unconditionally. Yet, in that moment, as he gazed upon the faces of his estranged parents, Naruto felt something stir within him. A flicker of hope, a yearning for reconciliation that he had long suppressed, buried beneath layers of pain and resentment. Kushina's hand trembled as she reached out, her fingers tentatively brushing against Naruto's cheek. Her violet eyes shimmered with unshed tears, and her voice wavered with a raw, maternal tenderness that had been absent for far too long. "My son," she whispered, the words catching in her throat. "My beautiful, strong son. Can you ever forgive us?" Naruto's stoic mask wavered, his lips parting as if to speak, but no words came. He swallowed hard, his eyes flickering with a myriad of emotions: hurt, anger, and a longing so deep it threatened to consume him. Naruto held their gazes, his expression unreadable. For a long moment, the courtyard was shrouded in a heavy silence, charged with a tension that seemed to hold the entire crowd in thrall. "Like I said to Hokage-sama, I will forgive you, but I won't forget," he murmured, his voice low and laced with a depth of emotion that seemed to transcend mere words. Menma and Mito exchanged a glance, their expressions a mix of hope and uncertainty, unsure of what this tentative reconciliation would mean for their family. Taking a deep breath, Naruto nodded slowly. "It won't be easy, and there's still much we need to work through," he said, his voice low but steady. "But I'm willing to try, for all our sake. I just need time." Kushina let out a choked sob, pulling Naruto into a fierce embrace, her tears dampening his shoulder. Minato followed suit, wrapping his arms around his family, his eyes shining with a mixture of joy and relief. With a swift motion, Naruto formed a hand seal, and his body erupted in a swirl of black and white flames. The crowd gasped, recoiling from the intense heat and light, but when the flames subsided, Naruto was gone, leaving only a lingering sense of awe and mystery in his wake. An hour before the present time. Naruto sat cross-legged on a grassy hilltop, his eyes closed in deep meditation. The gentle breeze caressed his whiskered cheeks, carrying the scents of wildflowers and earth. Yet, despite the tranquil surroundings, a storm raged within him, a tempest of emotions that threatened to consume his very being. Darkness, born of years of neglect and pain, swirled like an inky vortex, yearning to engulf him. Flashes of memory assailed him: the loneliness, the dismissive glances, the whispered words that cut deeper than any blade. Naruto clenched his fists, his knuckles whitening as he fought against the tide of bitterness that sought to drown him. Suddenly, Naruto found himself in a familiar place, his mindscape, a realm where his consciousness dwelled. The once serene landscape had transformed into a twisted reflection of his inner turmoil. Dark clouds swirled overhead, casting ominous shadows across the barren ground. The voice, echoing from the depths of his psyche, beckoned to him. "Embrace your true self, Naruto. Embrace the darkness." Naruto whirled around, his eyes widening as he came face to face with a manifestation of his darkest fears, a shadowy figure that mirrored his appearance, yet radiated a malevolent aura. "Who are you?" Naruto demanded, his voice wavering slightly. The dark visage sneered, its eyes glowing with an eerie crimson light. "I am Yami. The embodiment of your pain, your anguish, and your rage," it hissed. "The part of you that has been suppressed for far too long." "You're wrong," Naruto countered, his resolve strengthening. "I won't let the darkness consume me." "I'm really that foolish," Yami scoffed. "You think you can resist?" Your so-called light is nothing but a flickering candle in the face of my overwhelming power." As if to emphasize its point, Yami extended a hand and tendrils of black flames began to coalesce around it. The flames danced and writhed, casting an eerie glow across the mindscape. Naruto's eyes narrowed and he instinctively slipped into a defensive stance. "I won't let you control me," he declared, his voice resonating with determination. Yami laughed, a chilling sound that sent shivers down Naruto's spine. "Control you? No, my dear Naruto, I am you. I am the embodiment of your true potential, the power you've denied for far too long." But the flick of its wrist, the dark visage unleashed a torrent of black flames toward Naruto. The flames twisted and contorted in the air, moving with sinister sentience as they closed in on their target. Naruto braced himself, his own hands igniting with brilliant white flames, the embodiment of his resolve, his connection to the avatars who had guided him. The two opposing forces collided in a spectacular display of light and darkness, each struggling for dominance. Naruto grunted, pushing back against the onslaught of black fire with his blazing white inferno. The mindscape trembled as the clashing energies crackled and hissed, waves of heat radiating outward. Yami's crimson eyes glinted with malice, his twisted sneer revealing sharpened fangs. "You fool yourself if you think you can defeat me," he snarled, black flames licking at his hands. "Once I take over our body, I burn everything that causes us pain. So, burn and die already, for our sakes." With a feral roar, Yami unleashed a torrent of black fire, the twisted flames surging forward like writhing serpents. Naruto grunted, his muscles straining as he poured every ounce of his willpower into maintaining the barrier of brilliant white flames. Beads of sweat formed on his brow, trickling down his whiskered cheeks as the two opposing forces clashed in a spectacular display of light and darkness. "You're nothing but a manifestation of my pain," Naruto shouted, his voice reverberating through the mindscape. "A shadow born from years of neglect and anguish. But I won't let you consume me." Yami's laughter echoed, a chilling sound that sent shivers down Naruto's spine. "Foolish child," he taunted. "You denied me no longer." Naruto gritted his teeth, his eyes narrowing in determination. "Breathe," he reminded himself, drawing in a slow, steadying breath. "Focus on the light." Focusing his mind, Naruto unleashed a torrent of white fire, the blazing inferno surging forth with a thunderous roar. The brilliant flames danced and swirled, each lick of fire a manifestation of his determination to conquer the darkness that threatened to consume him. The white inferno clashed against the twisted black flames emanating from Yami, the two opposing forces colliding in a spectacular display of light and shadow. The mindscape trembled as the energies crackled and hissed, waves of heat radiating outward like ripples on a disturbed pond. Naruto grunted, his muscles straining as he poured every ounce of his will into maintaining the barrier of brilliant white fire. Beads of sweat formed on his brow, trickling down his whiskered cheeks as the two opposing forces battled for supremacy, each seeking to overwhelm the other. The air crackled with energy, the very fabric of Naruto's mindscape seeming to bend and warp under the intense power of the clashing infernos. Yet, Naruto refused to falter, his eyes blazing with determination as he remembered the lessons of his mentors, the importance of balance, of holding fast to one's inner light, no matter how consuming the darkness might seem. With a mighty roar, Naruto unleashed a final powerful surge of white fire, the blazing inferno enveloping the twisted black flames in a brilliant all-consuming blaze. "You can't hold me in this prison, Naruto. I will be backkkk." Yami howled in fury, its form dissolving into wisps of smoke as the light consumed it. Naruto sank to his knees, his chest heaving from the exertion. The mindscape around him began to shift, the twisted landscape giving way to a serene meadow bathed in warm sunlight. The darkness had been vanquished, at least for now, and Naruto felt a sense of peace wash over him. As he lifted his gaze, he found himself back in the real world, the gentle breeze caressing his face. Naruto drew in a deep breath, savoring the scent of wildflowers and the earthy aroma of the forest. He had emerged victorious from his inner battle, his connection to the avatars stronger than ever. Weaving through the foliage, Naruto emerged into a small clearing, his gaze immediately drawn to the figures embroiled in combat. Iruka, his academy instructor, stood with his back against a tree, kunai in hand, facing off against a familiar figure Mizuki, the treacherous shinobi who had once been his teacher. "Mizuki, you treacherous snake." Iruka spat, his kunai poised for battle. "How dare you betray the village and attempt to steal the scroll of seals?" Mizuki sneered, clutching the ancient scroll tightly. "Don't act so righteous, Iruka. You know as well as I do that this village has become complacent, relying on outdated traditions and denying its true potential." "That's no excuse for your actions," Iruka retorted, his eyes narrowing. "The scroll of seals contains forbidden techniques that could bring ruin upon us all." "Exactly," Mizuki hissed. "With this knowledge, I'll unlock powers beyond your wildest dreams. I'll be unstoppable." Naruto's eyes widened as he took in the scene, his heart pounding in his ears. Clutched in Mizuki's grasp was the Scroll of Seals, a repository of powerful techniques and forbidden knowledge. Anger flared within Naruto, his hands balling into fists as he realized the gravity of the situation. Iruka shifted his stance, his gaze unwavering. "I won't let you misuse that scroll, Mizuki. It's my duty as a shinobi of the leaf to stop you." "Ha!" Mizuki barked a harsh laugh. "You, stop me? Don't make me laugh, Iruka. You were always a pathetic excuse for a ninja." With a burst of speed, Mizuki launched himself at Iruka, a kunai clutched in his free hand. The two shinobi clashed, steel ringing against steel as they exchanged a furious volley of blows. Iruka grunted, parrying a vicious lash from Mizuki's kunai before retaliating with a sweeping kick. Mizuki leapt back, his eyes glinting with malice. "I'll enjoy watching you suffer, Iruka. But first, I'll deal with that meddlesome brat." Mizuki scanned the area where he thought Menma was concealed, yet Naruto was nowhere to be seen. From the shadows, Naruto emerged, his eyes blazing with determination. With a swift motion, he extended his hand, channeling the swirling vortex of darkness and light that welled within him. "Dark Flame Art. Purgatory Wave," he uttered, his voice resonating with power. In his palm, a torrent of violet flames coalesced, dancing and writhing with an otherworldly energy. The flames seemed alive, pulsating with an intense heat that distorted the very air around them. Naruto's gaze locked onto Mizuki, his jaw set in a firm line. The traitorous shinobi's eyes widened in surprise and fear as he beheld the mesmerizing display of Naruto's newfound power. For a moment, even Iruka faltered, taken aback by the sheer intensity of the violet inferno that engulfed Naruto's hand. With a mighty thrust, Naruto unleashed the purgatory wave, sending a searing torrent of violet flames hurtling towards Mizuki. The flames roared and crackled, twisting and contorting in the air, as if guided by some unseen force. The very ground trembled as the intense heat scorched the earth, leaving a trail of molten rock in its wake. Mizuki's eyes widened in terror as the violet inferno bore down upon him. He attempted to leap aside, but the flames seemed to anticipate his movements, altering their course with uncanny precision. The traitorous shinobi gritted his teeth, raising his arms in a futile attempt to shield himself from the onslaught. The purgatory wave slammed into Mizuki with the force of a raging tempest, enveloping him in a blazing vortex of violet flames. The traitorous shinobi's agonized screams echoed through the clearing as the inferno scorched his flesh, the intense heat melting away his defenses. Yet, even as Mizuki's form was consumed by the violet blaze, Naruto's expression remained resolute, his grip on the dark flame art unwavering. The flames continued to swirl and dance, their intensity undiminished, as if fueled by Naruto's unwavering determination. Iruka's eyes widened in alarm as the searing violet flames engulfed Mizuki. For a moment, it seemed as though the traitorous shinobi was doomed to be consumed by the inferno's wrath. However, a sudden surge of chakra erupted from within the blazing vortex, dispersing the flames and revealing Mizuki's form. His body was scorched and blistered, his clothes charred and smoking. Yet, despite the grievous injuries, Mizuki remained standing, a twisted grin etched upon his face. Slowly, a dark pattern began to spread across his skin, coalescing into a sinister seal that pulsed with an ominous power. "Foolish brat," Mizuki snarled, his voice distorted by the cursed seal's influence. "Did you really think your puny flames could stop me?" With a feral roar, Mizuki's body underwent a grotesque transformation. His muscles bulged and contorted, his skin taking on a sickly gray hue. Thick reptilian scales sprouted along his arms and legs, and his features twisted into a monstrous visage, complete with elongated fangs and glowing, slitted eyes. The mutated Mizuki flexed his clawed hands, letting out a guttural chuckle that sent shivers down Iruka's spine. "This is the power bestowed upon me by Lord Orochimaru," he hissed. "With the cursed seal, I am unstoppable." Naruto's eyes narrowed, his jaw clenched with determination. He had faced formidable foes before, but the sheer malevolence radiating from Mizuki's cursed form was unlike anything he had encountered. "Iruka-san," Naruto called out, his voice steady despite the gravity of the situation. "I'll handle this. You need to get to safety and alert the Hokage." Iruka opened his mouth to protest, but the resolute look in Naruto's eyes gave him pause. With a reluctant nod, he turned and fled into the forest, leaving Naruto to face the monstrous Mizuki alone. Mizuki's twisted features contorted into a feral grin as he locked his gaze onto Naruto. "Just you and me, brat," he snarled. "Let's see if you're really as powerful as you think you are." With inhuman speed, Mizuki launched himself at Naruto, his clawed hands outstretched and poised to strike. Naruto braced himself, his body coiling like a spring as he prepared to unleash his powerful dark flame techniques once more. Mizuki's monstrous form hurtled through the air, his razor-sharp talons glinting in the dappled sunlight. "I'll tear you apart, brat," he snarled, spittle flying from his twisted maw. Naruto's eyes narrowed, his muscles tensing as he tracked Mizuki's trajectory. At the last possible moment, he pivoted, allowing the mutated shinobi's claws to graze past him harmlessly. Is that all you've got? Naruto taunted, his voice laced with a confidence that belied his age. Mizuki whirled around, his bestial features contorted in rage. Don't get beepy, brat. He roared, launching himself at Naruto once more. This time, Naruto was ready. As Mizuki closed in, he extended his palm, summoning a swirling vortex of violet flames. Dark flame art. Hellfire barrage. From Naruto's palm burst a cascade of intense violet fireballs, each one racing towards Mizuki with incredible velocity. The altered shinobi let out a fierce snarl, skillfully maneuvering through the barrage of fiery orbs that threatened to engulf him. Pathetic. Mizuki taunted, his inhuman agility allowing him to evade the fiery assault. Is that the best you can do? Naruto's lips curled into a feral grin. Not even close. With a swift hand seal, Naruto summoned a massive wave of violet flames, the inferno surging forth like a raging tsunami. Mizuki's eyes widened in alarm as the searing blaze engulfed him, the intense heat searing his mutated flesh. Mizuki howled in agony, his body writhing as the dark flames licked at his skin. Curse you, brat. He snarled, his voice distorted by the pain. Naruto maintained his stance, pouring more chakra into the inferno to sustain its intensity. Beads of sweat trickled down his brow as he focused on containing the immense power of the dark flames. Suddenly, a burst of malevolent chakra erupted from within the blazing vortex, dispelling the flames and revealing Mizuki's twisted form. The mutated shinobi was badly burned, his skin blistered and blackened, but he remained standing, his eyes glowing with an otherworldly malice. Is that all you've got, brat? Mizuki taunted, his voice a raspy hiss. I've barely even begun to tap into the true power of Lord Orochimaru's cursed seal. With a feral roar, Mizuki unleashed a torrent of corrosive chakra, the viscous energy sizzling as it struck the ground, melting the earth into bubbling pools of viscous sludge. Naruto leaped back, his eyes widening as he realized the true extent of Mizuki's newfound power. You're going to have to do better than that, Mizuki, Naruto taunted, his voice betraying none of the uncertainty he felt. Mizuki's twisted features contorted into a feral grin. Oh, I intend to, brat, he snarled, his claws flexing in anticipation. I'm just getting started. You're nothing but a worthless orphan, a constant reminder of the villagers' shame. Naruto's jaw clenched, his fists tightening as the hateful word struck a chord deep within him. Look at you, pathetic and powerless, Mizuki spat, his voice dripping with venom. Your own parents abandoned you because they knew you were a failure. A mistake that should have never been born. Naruto flinched, his eyes burning with unshed tears. The cruel words ripped open old wounds, stirring the darkness lurking within his soul. Mizuki's laughter echoed through the clearing, harsh and mocking. What's the matter, brat? Did I strike a nerve? Face it, you're nothing but an unwanted burden, a stain on the legacy of this village. Naruto's hands trembled, his chakra flickering wildly as the darkness threatened to consume him. The voices of his past tormentors echoed in his mind, fueling the maelstrom of emotions that raged within him. You think you're special because you can bend a few flames? Mizuki sneered. You're nothing but a freak, a monster that should have been put down at birth. Something within Naruto snapped like a taut cord, unleashing a torrent of raw emotions that had been simmering beneath the surface for far too long. A primal guttural roar tore from his throat, echoing through the clearing with an intensity that seemed to shake the very foundations of the earth. Violet flames erupted around him, dancing and writhing with a ferocity that scorched the very air. The inferno pulsated with an otherworldly energy, each lick of fire a manifestation of Naruto's unbridled fury. His eyes burned with a feral light, the azure hue giving way to a smoldering crimson that held the promise of untamed power. Naruto's features contorted into a mask of rage, his whiskered cheeks taut and his lips curled back in a snarl that revealed his elongated canines. The tremendous force of the avatar state surged through him, his chakra swirling and coalescing into a maelstrom of raw power. The forest floor trembled beneath the weight of Naruto's unleashed might, the trees swaying as if caught in the grip of an invisible tempest. Fissures snaked across the earth, crackling and hissing as the violet flames licked at the ground, leaving behind a trail of molten rock. Naruto's body pulsed with an aura of pure, unadulterated fury, the air around him distorting and rippling with the sheer intensity of his chakra. His muscles bulged, straining against the confines of his skin, as the avatar state transformed him into a living embodiment of elemental wrath. Shut up. Naruto snarled, his voice distorted by the sheer force of his emotions. You know nothing about me, you damn traitor. Mizuki's mocking laughter only fueled Naruto's rage. Struck a nerve, did I? Good, let's see how well that anger serves you when I'm ripping out your beating heart. With a feral snarl, Mizuki launched himself at Naruto, his claws extended and poised to strike. Naruto met the attack head-on, his body wreathed in violet flames as he unleashed a torrent of fiery blows. That is until Naruto, fueled by the raw emotions coursing through his veins, managed to slip past Mizuki's defenses. With lightning-fast reflexes honed by years of training, he ducked under a vicious swipe of Mizuki's claws and unleashed a devastating blow to the traitor's midsection. Mizuki let out a guttural growl as Naruto's fist, wreathed in searing violet flames, connected with his mutated flesh. The force of the impact sent him staggering backwards, his bestial features contorted in a mask of agony. The stench of charred flesh filled the air as Naruto's relentless assault began to take its toll on Mizuki's mutated form. The traitor's movements became sluggish, his once fluid motions hindered by the accumulation of burns and injuries. Seizing the opportunity, Naruto unleashed a devastating combination of kicks and punches, each strike punctuated by a burst of violet flames. Mizuki howled in agony as the dark inferno scorched his skin, leaving him stumbling and disoriented. But the primal roar, Naruto summoned the last of his chakra reserves, channeling the raw power of the Avatar state into his next attack. His hands ignited with a blinding violet blaze, the flames swirling and coalescing into a vortex of intense heat and energy. Dark Flame Art. Twin Dragon's Embrace. Naruto's voice thundered, rippling with power as he thrust his palms forward. From his hands erupted a torrent of searing violet fire, the blazing inferno twisting and contorting into the shapes of two colossal dragons. The ethereal beasts writhed and undulated, their forms composed entirely of roiling violet flames that crackled and hissed with an otherworldly intensity. Their gaping maws opened in silent roars, revealing blazing interiors that radiated waves of scorching heat. The twin dragons surged towards Mizuki, their movements fluid yet purposeful, as if guided by an unseen force. The mutated traitor's eyes widened in terror as the fiery constructs bore down upon him, their infernal radiance casting dancing shadows across his twisted features. Mizuki attempted to raise his arms in a futile gesture of defense, but the dragons paid no heed. The twin serpentine constructs of searing violet flames coiled around his limbs, their intense heat searing his mutated flesh. Mizuki howled in agony as the dark inferno scorched his skin, the stench of charred flesh filling the air. The two fiery dragons tightened their grip, lifting Mizuki's struggling form into the air with ease. His eyes, once filled with malicious glee, were now wide with terror as he found himself trapped in the embrace of Naruto's devastating technique. "No, please." Mizuki begged, his voice hoarse and strained. "Have mercy." Naruto's expression remained stoic, his eyes burning with an intensity that betrayed the maelstrom of emotions raging within him. "You had your chance, Mizuki," he said, his voice low and laced with a steely resolve. But the swift motion, Naruto leaped into the air, his palm glowing with chakra. Mizuki's eyes widened in horror as he realized Naruto's intent, his pleas devolving into a blood-curdling scream. Naruto's chakra-infused palm struck Mizuki with devastating force, slamming his head towards the ground with a sickening crunch. The impact was catastrophic, splitting Mizuki's mutated form down the middle in a gruesome display of power. The twin dragons dissipated, their fiery coils fading into wisps of smoke as Mizuki's lifeless corpse hit the ground, his body a mangled and charred mess. Naruto landed gracefully, his chest heaving with exertion as the adrenaline of battle began to fade. Naruto's kimono was drenched in crimson, the once pristine white fabric now stained with the viscous lifeblood of his fallen foe. Rivulets of scarlet trailed down his arms, mingling with the beads of sweat that glistened on his skin, a testament to the intensity of the battle he had just endured. His golden hair, once vibrant and untamed, now bore streaks of red that seemed to pulse with an otherworldly energy, mirroring the crimson hue that burned in his eyes. The fury that had consumed him during the fight lingered, leaving him with a feral countenance that belied the calm determination he had once displayed. Naruto's chest heaved with each ragged breath, his muscles quivering from the exertion of channeling the immense power of the Avatar state. The air was thick with the acrid stench of charred flesh and ozone, a lingering reminder of the dark flames that had engulfed the clearing moments before. The weight of Mizuki's death bore down upon Naruto like a heavy shroud. The thrill of victory was tainted by a gnawing sense of unease that threatened to consume him from within. Yet, beneath the surface, a darker impulse stirred a primal urge that revealed in the chaos he had wrought. He could feel it coiling within him like a serpent, whispering seductive promises of power and dominance. The mere thought of taking a life should have filled him with revulsion, but instead, a twisted fascination gripped him, a morbid curiosity to explore the depths of his abilities. "I always come back," whispered the voice of Yami in his mind. Naruto's features hardened, his once innocent eyes now harboring a haunting void. The flames of emotion that had once burned so brightly within him seemed to have been extinguished, leaving behind a hollow shell, a vessel devoid of empathy or remorse. An eerie silence that blanketed the forest was shattered by the faint rustling of leaves, a telltale sign that someone or something was lurking in the shadows. Naruto's senses were heightened, his body coiled like a spring, ready to unleash another devastating assault if needed. His piercing gaze swept the treeline, zeroing in on the source of the disturbance. "You can come out now, Menma," he called out, his voice laced with a steely edge that belied his calm demeanor. Slowly, a figure emerged from the foliage, revealing Menma with his eyes were wide, his expression a mixture of awe and trepidation as he took in the grisly scene before him. Menma swallowed hard, his gaze drawn to the mutilated remains of Mizuki, the traitorous shinobi who had dared to steal the scroll of seals. The ground was scorched and blackened, a testament to the ferocity of Naruto's dark flame techniques, and the air hung thick with the acrid stench of charred flesh. As Menma's eyes met Naruto's, he couldn't help but feel a shiver of trepidation run down his spine. Gone was the quiet, reserved brother he thought he knew, replaced by a figure cloaked in an aura of primal power and unbridled fury. "I knew he was strong," Menma murmured, his voice barely audible over the crackling of the dying embers. But this he trailed off, his gaze sweeping over the carnage that littered the clearing. Slowly, Naruto's features softened, the feral glint in his eyes giving way to a haunted expression that spoke volumes of the inner turmoil he was grappling with. He opened his mouth as if to speak, but the words caught in his throat, choked by the weight of the emotions roiling within him. Menma watched, transfixed, as Naruto's shoulders slumped, his bravado dissipating like smoke in the wind. In that moment, his brother seemed smaller, more human, a young man burdened by the consequences of his actions and the darkness that lurked within his soul. "He is," Menma began, his voice trailing off as he struggled to find the right words. "He is more than just a monster." Present time. After a moment of tense silence, Naruto finally found his voice. "This is the cruel reality of the shinobi world, Menma," he said, his tone laced with a weary resignation. "It's not just about mastering jutsu or honing your skills. Sometimes, you have to make impossible choices, to do unspeakable things for the sake of your village, your comrades." Menma's brow furrowed as he struggled to comprehend the weight of Naruto's words. "But killing?" he asked, his voice tinged with uncertainty. "Surely there's another way." Naruto shook his head slowly, his eyes haunted by memories best left unspoken. "In this world, sometimes there are no good choices, only difficult ones. Mizuki was a traitor, willing to sell the village's secrets for his own gain. He had to be stopped, no matter the cost." Menma opened his mouth to protest, but the conviction in Naruto's gaze gave him pause. He had always known, deep down, that the life of a shinobi was fraught with peril and difficult choices, but witnessing the aftermath of such brutality firsthand was a jarring reminder of the harsh realities they faced. "I didn't want to kill him," Naruto continued, his voice barely above a whisper. "But I had no choice. He was too far gone, consumed by the cursed seal's power. If I hadn't stopped him, he could have brought ruin upon the village." Menma nodded slowly, his mind struggling to reconcile the image of his brother, the kind, gentle soul he thought he knew, with the merciless force of nature that had laid waste to Mizuki. Is this what it means to be a shinobi?" he asked, his voice laced with a mixture of awe and trepidation. Naruto's gaze hardened, his eyes burning with an intensity that seemed to pierce through Menma's very soul. "It's a burden we must all bear," he said, his voice low and resolute. "The path of a shinobi is paved with blood and sacrifice. But we walk it so that others may know peace." In that moment, Menma saw a glimpse of his brother's weight, the constant struggle to balance his own humanity with the demands of a world that often required ruthless action. It was a burden that few could truly comprehend, and one that threatened to consume even the strongest of souls. Time skip. Morning. The morning sun cast its warm rays over the Hidden Leaf village, bathing the streets in a gentle glow. Naruto made his way through the familiar paths, his mind still grappling with the events of the previous night. The weight of Mizuki's death lingered, a heavy burden that threatened to consume him from within. As he approached the academy, the sounds of laughter and chatter filled the air, a stark contrast to the darkness that had enveloped him just hours before. With a deep breath, Naruto steeled himself, pushing aside the haunting memories and focusing on the task at hand. Inside the classroom, the familiar faces of his classmates greeted him, their expressions a mix of excitement and apprehension. Today was the day they would be assigned to their genin teams, the first step on their journey to becoming full-fledged shinobi. Iruka stood at the front of the class, his expression solemn as he surveyed the eager young faces before him. His gaze lingered momentarily on Naruto, and for a fleeting moment, the academy instructor's eyes reflected the weight of the knowledge he now carried, the truth of Naruto's dark flames, and the battle that had taken place in the forest. Clearing his throat, Iruka began to address the class. "Today, you take the first step towards becoming a true shinobi of the Hidden Leaf Village," he announced, his voice imbued with pride and responsibility. "The bonds you forge with your teammates will be crucial, they will become your brothers and sisters in arms, your comrades in the face of adversity. Additionally, we have an unbalanced number of students due to Naruto joining yesterday. To even out the teams, Hokage-sama is adding 4 new students. Note: classroom introductions for the characters won't be provided, as 2 are canonical filler and the others are original characters, Ox." Naruto listened intently, his hands clenched into fists as he thought about the prospect of being part of a team, of forging connections with others, filled him with a sense of anticipation and a hint of trepidation. These teams have been carefully selected, Iruka continued, his gaze sweeping across the classroom. Each one has been assembled with the goal of creating a balanced and cohesive unit capable of facing the challenges that lie ahead. As Iruka began to call out the names of the newly formed genin teams, Naruto felt a sense of unease settle in the pit of his stomach. His mind raced with possibilities, each scenario more daunting than the last. Team 7, Iruka called out, his voice cutting through the hushed silence of the classroom. Uchiha Sasuke, Haruno Sakura. A high-pitched squeal erupted from Sakura, the pink-haired Kunoichi, as she shot a triumphant glance towards her longtime rival, Ino. Her green eyes sparkled with unbridled glee, and a self-satisfied smirk played on her lips. "Cha. Take that, Ino pig. True love conquers all," she exclaimed, her voice laced with a mixture of excitement and smugness. Ino scowled, her brow furrowing in annoyance as she glared daggers at Sakura. "Don't get too excited, billboard brow," she retorted, her tone dripping with disdain. "Sasuke-kun would never fall for someone like you, a flat-chested, wide-forehead freak." Before the two girls could escalate their verbal sparring, Iruka cleared his throat loudly, effectively silencing their bickering. "And the final member of Team 7 is I," he announced, his gaze sweeping across the classroom. A young boy with pale skin and jet black hair sat impassively, his expression devoid of emotion. He nodded curtly, his dark eyes betraying no hint of excitement or disappointment. "Understood," he said, his tone flat and emotionless, like a well-trained soldier acknowledging an order. Sakura's elation faltered slightly as she eyed her new teammate with a mixture of curiosity and apprehension. There was something unsettling about Sai's eerie calmness, his apparent lack of emotional depth. "Sai, huh?" she murmured, her brow furrowing slightly. "I've never heard of him before. She can't be this dumb, right? Iruka just said that they will be having new students," the narrator said. Sasuke, the brooding Uchiha prodigy, remained silent, his onyx eyes flickering with disinterest. His lips were set in a thin, impassive line, and his body language radiated an air of indifference. He had hoped to be paired with stronger shinobi, ones who could prove themselves worthy of his attention and capable of keeping pace with his ambitions. Sensing the tension in the air, Sakura raised her hand tentatively, her voice tinged with a mixture of curiosity and trepidation. "Sensei," she began, "who will be our jounin instructor?" Iruka consulted the scroll in his hands, his brow furrowing slightly as his eyes scanned the intricate kanji etched onto the parchment. "Your jounin sensei will be Hot Aki Kakashi," he announced, his tone leaving no room for further questions. "Teammate," Iruka called out, his voice cutting through the hushed silence that had fallen over the classroom. "Inyazuka Kiba, Hyuga Hinata, and Aburami Shino." A wide grin spread across Kiba's face as he glanced at his newly assigned teammates. With a playful nudge to the puppy nestled in his jacket, he exclaimed, "Hear that, Akamaru? We hit the jackpot. With my awesome skills and you by my side, we're gonna be an unstoppable team." Akamaru let out an excited yip, wagging his tail enthusiastically, clearly sharing his master's confidence. Hinata's pale lavender eyes flickered towards Kiba and a timid smile graced her lips. Despite her shy demeanor, there was a glimmer of determination in her gaze. I'm looking forward to working with you, Kiba-kun, Shino-kun," she said, her voice soft but resolute. Shino remained impassive, his features obscured by the high collar of his jacket and the dark sunglasses that concealed his eyes. "Our combined capabilities will make us a formidable tracking and reconnaissance unit," he stated matter-of-factly, his tone devoid of emotion. Kiba rolled his eyes playfully at Shino's bipedical approach, seemingly unfazed by his teammate's stoic demeanor. "Geez, Shino, loosen up a bit, will ya? We're gonna be a great team and we're gonna kick some serious butt out there." A soft giggle escaped Hinata's lips, her shyness momentarily forgotten as she was swept up in Kiba's infectious enthusiasm. Despite their contrasting personalities, there was a sense of camaraderie forming between the three genin, a bond that would be tested and strengthened through the challenges that lay ahead. Iruka watched the interaction unfold with a small, wistful smile tugging at the corners of his mouth. He saw the glimmer of potential in these young shinobi, a spark that could one day ignite into a blazing fire. Though their paths would undoubtedly be fraught with hardship and sacrifice, he had faith in their ability to overcome any obstacle, united by the unwavering bonds of friendship and loyalty. As the names continued to be called out, each newly formed team filled with a mixture of anticipation and trepidation. "Your jounin instructor will be Yuhi Kurenai," Iruka announced, drawing the attention of the genin once more. "Team 9 is already completed. Team 10. Shikamaru Nara, Ino Yamanaka, and Choji Akimichi," Iruka announced, his voice cutting through the din of chatter that had filled the classroom. Ino's eyes widened in disbelief, her perfectly manicured brows knitting together in a deep frown. "Iruka-sensei, why do I have to be on a team with this lazy bum and that chubby oaf?" she whined, shooting disdainful looks at her newly assigned teammates. Shikamaru, ever the embodiment of nonchalance, rolled his eyes at Ino's outburst. Troublesome woman, he muttered under his breath, his gaze fixed on the clouds drifting lazily outside the window. Toji, on the other hand, seemed utterly unfazed by Ino's insult, his attention firmly focused on the bag of chips he was munching on. With a nonchalant shrug, he offered the bag to Shikamaru. At least we won't have to worry about running out of snacks, he said, his voice muffled by the constant crunching. Iruka's brow furrowed in disapproval, his lips pressed into a thin line. Ino, he chided, his voice carrying a hint of reproach. That's no way to speak about your new teammates. Ino scoffed, tossing her long, blonde ponytail over her shoulder with a dramatic flourish. How's having lazy bones and a glutton on my team supposed to be balanced? She retorted, her tone dripping with disdain. Shikamaru, ever the master of indifference, simply muttered a dismissive whatever, Ino, before promptly returning to his slumber atop the desk, his arms folded beneath his head as a makeshift pillow. Toji, undeterred by Ino's barbs, continued to happily munch away at his chips, occasionally offering a handful to Shikamaru, who would lazily accept them without opening his eyes. Alright now, Team 11, Iruka announced, his voice carrying a sense of finality. Menma and Mito Uzumaki Namikaze, Yakumo Kurama. Menma's eyes widened slightly at the mention of his name, a mix of emotions swirling within him. He glanced over at his twin sister, Mito, their gazes locking momentarily. The weight of their clan's legacy hung heavy upon their shoulders, an unspoken expectation that they would uphold the honor of the Uzumaki and Namikaze names. Beside them, Yakumo Kurama sat with a serene expression, her delicate features bearing an unmistakable air of grace and poise. Though she hailed from a prestigious clan renowned for their powerful genjutsu techniques, her demeanor was humble, devoid of the arrogance that often accompanied those of noble birth. Your Jounin instructor, Iruka continued, will be Kushina Uzumaki. A collective murmur rippled through the classroom at the mention of Kushina's name. The red-hot habanero, as she was known, was a formidable kunoichi whose prowess on the battlefield was matched only by her fiery temper and unwavering dedication to her students. Menma couldn't help but feel a twinge of apprehension at the prospect of being taught by his own mother. While he loved and respected her deeply, he knew firsthand the intensity of her training methods and the high standards she held her students to. Mito, on the other hand, seemed to swell with pride at the announcement. Her eyes shone with determination, eager to prove herself worthy of her mother's tutelage and to live up to the expectations that came with bearing the Uzumaki name. As the rest of the teams were announced, Menma found his mind wandering, lost in a whirlwind of thoughts and emotions. He couldn't help but wonder about his brother, Naruto, and the mysterious circumstances that had led to him being left off the team assignments. The shadow of guilt flickered across Menma's features as he recalled the events of the previous night, the gut-wrenching scene of Naruto's battle with Mizuki etched into his memory like a brand. He had witnessed firsthand the raw power and ferocity that his brother possessed, a side of him that Menma had never even fathomed existed. Unbidden, the image of Naruto's blood-stained visage flashed before his mind's eye, his brother's features twisted into a mask of primal fury as he unleashed the full might of his dark flames upon the traitorous Mizuki. Menma shuddered, a chill running down his spine as he remembered the sheer brutality of the battle, the sickening crunch of bone, and the stench of charred flesh that had permeated the air. Pushing those haunting thoughts aside, Menma forced himself to refocus on the present. He knew that the path ahead would be fraught with challenges, but he was determined to prove himself worthy of the Uzumaki name. Okay now, lastly Team 12. Naruto Kagami, Ikari Akira, and Hikari Yuna, Iruka announced, his gaze sweeping over the trio of genin. Naruto's eyes were immediately drawn to his new teammates. Akira exuded an otherworldly aura, his jet black hair cascading in ethereal waves that seemed to shimmer with an otherworldly light. His pale blue eyes and ghostly complexion only added to his haunting appearance, accentuated by the tattered cloak that flowed around him like a spectral veil. As Naruto's gaze lingered on Akira's delicate features and lithe frame, a faint blush tinged his whiskered cheeks. He couldn't help but wonder if his sudden attraction stemmed from a deeper truth about himself, or if Akira's androgynous beauty was simply captivating to all who laid eyes upon him. It's either if I'm gay or he is too feminine to be a guy. Naruto thought, his mind whirling with conflicting emotions. Within the depths of his mindscape, Korra's melodic laughter echoed, her amusement resonating through the intricate realms of Naruto's psyche. You know, Naruto-kun, there is nothing wrong with being bisexual, she chimed, her voice laced with mirth. Naruto's blush intensified, his cheeks flushing a brilliant crimson that rivaled even Hinata's most bashful displays. Shut up. He retorted, his mental voice tinged with exasperation and a hint of embarrassment. Shaking his head, Naruto turned his attention to his other teammate, Yuna. She was a vision of radiant beauty, her golden tresses cascading like liquid sunlight, framing a face that seemed to glow with an ethereal light. Her amber eyes sparkled with an otherworldly warmth, and her sun-kissed skin seemed to radiate with an inner fire that defied mortal comprehension. Yuna's attire only added to her celestial allure, with a flowing battle yukata adorned with intricate sun ray patterns that swirled and danced with every graceful movement. A gleaming sash emblazoned with a sun emblem cinched her waist, while lightweight armor plates glinted and shimmered, refracting the sunlight in a dazzling display. Completing her ensemble was a pendant in the shape of a radiant sun, within which a small crystal pulsed with a faint golden glow, a physical manifestation of the solar energy that coursed through her veins. And, Jounin instructor, Iruka announced, his voice tinged with a hint of trepidation, "Oh Kami, bless this team Madarashi Anko. Class dismissed, come back so your team senseis can pick you up." Time skip. After Iruka announced all the teams, let all the genins take a 35-minute break. Once everybody got back in the classroom and all the assigned teams were sitting together, now we go on to see Team 12. Naruto was thinking about his sensei. That snake-obsessed maniac, Naruto thought, shuddering at the tales of Anko's reputation for sadistic training methods. Images flashed through his mind, razor-sharp kunai hurtling through the air, the sickly sweet scent of paralyzing toxins, and the echoes of maniacal laughter amidst the screams of her hapless victims. A chill ran down Naruto's spine as he recalled his grueling sessions with Kaioshin, the relentless avatar of Earth. Dodging massive boulders and evading earth-shattering attacks had been her idea of training, all while she cackled with sadistic glee. "Kami, why do you hate me?" Naruto silently lamented, his shoulders slumping in resignation. Within the depths of his mindscape, the avatar's voices echoed with amusement, their laughter reverberating through the intricate realms of Naruto's psyche. "Relax, Naruto-kun," Aang chimed in, his tone light and reassuring. "Anko may be unconventional, but she's one of the best instructors in the Leaf Village." "Yeah, you big baby," Korra chimed in, her teasing lull tempering the weight of Naruto's worries. "A little pain and suffering never hurt anyone, well, maybe a little, but you'll be fine." Naruto groaned inwardly, his mental voice tinged with exasperation. "Easy for you to say. You're not the ones who'll be dodging poison senbon and having snakes trying to bite your ass." Ayashi's booming laughter echoed through the mindscape, her mirth tinged with a hint of nostalgia. "Ah, those were the good old days. You should consider yourself lucky, kid. My training forged you into a true warrior." "Slavidriver," Naruto grumbled, his mental voice laced with exasperation as he severed the connection to his mindscape, shutting out the avatar's amused laughter. Akira's ghostly visage betrayed no emotion, his pale blue eyes fixed upon Iruka with an eerie, unblinking stare. The ethereal shinobi seemed unfazed by the revelation, his otherworldly aura exuding an air of calm detachment. "Yes, we got a badass sensei," Yuna exclaimed, her amber eyes sparkling with unbridled excitement. She could barely contain her enthusiasm, practically vibrating with anticipation at the prospect of being taught by the infamous Madarashi Anko. Yuna had heard the stories, whispered tales of the snake mistress's sadistic tendencies. Tales of kunai laced with paralyzing toxins, of traps laid with razor-sharp fangs, and of grueling endurance trials that pushed even the most hardened shinobi to their limits. Yet, beneath the anticipation, a flicker of uncertainty flickered within Yuna's amber depths. She had heard the stories, the rumors of Anko's sadistic streak, and her penchant for pushing her students to the brink of their limits, testing the boundaries of their endurance with each grueling session. Yuna couldn't help but wonder if she possessed the fortitude to withstand such trials, to emerge from the crucible of Anko's tutelage as a tempered warrior, worthy of bearing the mantle of a leaf shinobi. Still, the prospect of backing down from a challenge was utterly foreign to Yuna's fiery nature. She was a daughter of the sun, her very essence imbued with the blazing radiance that fueled the celestial orb's eternal dance across the heavens. Just as the sun's warmth nurtured life and illuminated even the darkest corners of the world, so too did Yuna's spirit burn with a determination to shed light upon the path that lay before her. A faint golden glow emanated from the sun pendant that adorned her battle yukata, pulsing in tandem with the resolute cadence of her heartbeat. Yuna's fingers traced the intricate etchings, drawing strength from the solar energy that coursed through her veins, an inheritance from her celestial ancestors. With a subtle nod, her golden tresses shifting like liquid sunlight, Yuna steeled herself for the challenges that awaited. She would face Anko's trials head-on, embracing the pain and hardship as necessary steps on her journey to becoming a true shinobi of the leaf. "This is going to be awesome." Yuna gushed, her golden locks swaying as she bounced on the balls of her feet. "Can you imagine the kind of training we'll get? No more boring target practice or lame D-rank missions." "Awesome?" Naruto echoed, his voice laced with disbelief. "More like a living nightmare. That woman is certifiably insane." Akira remained silent, his ghostly visage betraying no emotion as he observed the exchange between his new teammates. "Relax, Naruto-kun," Yuna chided, playfully elbowing him in the ribs. "Where's your sense of adventure? This is what being a shinobi is all about, facing challenges head-on and emerging stronger for it." Naruto opened his mouth to protest, but the words died on his lips as he met Yuna's fiery gaze. There was a determination in those amber depths, a burning passion that resonated deep within him, awakening the embers of his own indomitable spirit. Fine, Naruto conceded, a wry smile tugging at the corners of his lips. But don't come crying to me when Anko-sensei has us running for our lives from a horde of poisonous snakes or something equally twisted. Yuna's melodic laughter filled the air, her radiant smile lighting up the room like a miniature sun. That's the spirit, Naruto-kun. Now, let's go and show Anko-sensei what we're made of. Break. Two Jounin instructors arrive, each one exuding an aura of authority and experience that commands respect from the fresh-faced genin. Yuhi Kurenai, a vision of elegance and poise, stepped forward, her ruby-red eyes sweeping over her team with a mixture of pride and scrutiny. "Teammate," she called out, her voice carrying a melodic lilt that seemed to entrance all who heard it. Hiba, always full of energy, couldn't help but release a quiet whistle of approval. "Damn, we hit the jackpot with this one, boys," he murmured, his gaze lingering perhaps a bit too long on Kurenai's curvaceous figure. Hinata's cheeks flushed crimson at Kiba's brazen comment, her fingers fidgeting nervously with the hem of her jacket. Shino, as ever, remained impassive, his expression hidden behind the high collar of his coat and the dark glasses that concealed his eyes. "Watch your tongue, Inyazuka," Kurenai warned, her tone stern yet laced with a hint of amusement. "Lest you find yourself on the receiving end of my wrath." Hiba gulped audibly, his bravado momentarily deflated by Kurenai's piercing gaze. "Yes, ma'am," he stammered, offering a sheepish grin. Nearby, Saratobi Asuma strode into the classroom, a cigarette dangling from his lips as he surveyed the gathered genin. "Team 10, he called out, his deep baritone cutting through the chatter like a knife. Ino, ever the preening flower, flashed a dazzling smile at her new sensei, clearly undeterred by his rugged appearance. Shikamaru, on the other hand, merely let out a weary sigh, muttering something about the whole ordeal being troublesome. As the Jounin instructors continued to filter in, Kiba couldn't resist stealing a glance at Team 12, his gaze lingering on Naruto and his teammates with a beepy smirk playing across his lips. "Hey loser," he called out, his voice dripping with arrogance. "Looks like your team got stuck with the village's resident psycho as a sensei." 3 deadpan stares greeted Kiba's taunts, each one conveying a distinct message. Naruto's azure eyes narrowed, his whiskered features hardening into a mask of determination, a silent challenge to Inyazuka's arrogance. Yuna's amber gaze flickered with the intensity of a solar flare, her golden tresses seeming to crackle with barely contained energy, daring Kiba to underestimate her fiery spirit. But it was Akira's otherworldly stare that sent a chill down Kiba's spine. The ethereal shinobi's pale blue eyes seemed to pierce through flesh and bone, his ghostly visage radiating an aura of cold indifference that chilled the Inyazuka to his core. For a moment, Kiba found himself transfixed, his usual bravado faltering in the face of Akira's eerie, unblinking gaze. It was as if Akira's very presence was a manifestation of the realm beyond, a chilling reminder that there were forces at play that defied mortal comprehension. The tattered cloak that shrouded his lithe frame seemed to flutter with a spectral breeze, adding to the unsettling aura that surrounded him. Kiba swallowed hard, his beepy grin faltering as he found himself momentarily lost in the depths of Akira's haunting stare. It was as if the ethereal shinobi had peered into the very core of his being, laying bare his soul for inspection. Naruto rose from his seat, his movements deliberate and purposeful. A hush fell over the classroom as he made his way towards Kiba, the air thick with anticipation. Kiba, being the idiot he is, still couldn't pick up the hint and resist a beepy smirk as he eyed Naruto's approach. "What's the matter, loser?" he taunted, his voice dripping with arrogance. "Gonna try and show off for your new teammates?" Naruto didn't respond, his azure eyes fixed upon Kiba with an intensity that belied his seemingly calm demeanor. As he drew closer, the ground beneath Kiba's feet began to tremble, the subtle vibration sending a chill down the Inyazuka's spine. Suddenly, Kiba felt something sharp and unyielding press against his inner thigh, eliciting a sharp intake of breath. He glanced down, his eyes widening in alarm as he found himself staring at the jagged tip of an earth spike, mere inches from his most vulnerable area. Before Kiba could react, Naruto's gaze locked onto his, and the Inyazuka found himself transfixed by the haunting stare that seemed to bore into his very soul. It was the same piercing glare he had witnessed from Avatar Kaiashi herself, a look that promised unfathomable consequences for those foolish enough to cross her path. Naruto leaned in, his lips curling into a chilling smile that sent a shiver down Kiba's spine. "Or I'll castrate you," he whispered, his voice laced with a cold, calculated menace that left no room for doubt. The earth spike vanished as quickly as it had appeared, leaving Kiba trembling in its wake. The weight of Naruto's threat lingered in the air, a silent reminder of the depths of power and resolve that lay beneath his unassuming exterior. Before Naruto could return to his seat, a sudden crash echoed through the classroom, shattering the tense silence. All eyes turned towards the source of the commotion as a large tattered banner unfurled, revealing bold kanji that proclaimed, "The sexy and single and now Team 12 sensei, Mitarashi Anko." A plume of smoke erupted, obscuring the doorway, and a figure emerged from the haze, her presence commanding immediate attention. Mitarashi Anko stood before them, a devilish grin etched upon her features as she surveyed the room with a predatory gaze. Her lithe form was clad in a form-fitting mesh bodysuit that left little to the imagination, accentuating every curve and muscle with tantalizing allure. A tan trench coat hung open, revealing glimpses of creamy skin and the glint of steel from the various weapons adorning her body. Anko's violet hair was pulled back in a spiky ponytail, framing her delicate features and drawing attention to the mischievous glint in her eyes. A kunai dangled from her lips, held between her teeth in a brazen display of nonchalance that bordered on insolence. Well, Anko purred, her voice a sultry drawl that sent shivers down the spines of the gathered genin. Looks like I've got myself a fresh batch of brats to whip into shape. Her gaze swept over the classroom, lingering momentarily on Naruto and his teammates. A wicked grin curved her lips as she eyed the trio, her expression a mixture of anticipation and sadistic glee. "Ah, there you are," she mused, the kunai bobbing between her lips as she spoke. "The little ragtag team of misfits I've been assigned to torture, train." And as her gaze settled upon Naruto, Yuna and Akira, a feral grin spread across her features, her eyes glinting with a promise of the challenges that lay ahead. "Alright, brats," Anko declared, her voice cutting through the silence like a whip. "Let's get one thing straight, I'm not here to hold your hands and sing you lullabies. I'm here to push you to your limits and beyond, to forge you into the kind of shinobi that strike fear into the hearts of your enemies." Her kunai twirled between her fingers, a blur of silver that seemed to dance in the air with effortless grace. "So, you better be prepared to bleed, sweat, and maybe even shed a tear or two," she continued, her gaze boring into each of her students in turn. "Because by the time I'm done with you, you'll either be the baddest asses this village has ever seen, or a quivering pile of broken dreams." Anko's laughter echoed through the classroom, a sound that sent shivers down the spines of even the most seasoned shinobi. It was a taunt, a challenge, and a promise all rolled into one, a declaration that the road ahead would be fraught with pain, hardship, and the constant risk of unraveling at the seams. "Now, meet me at training ground 44, Anko's voice rang out, her words laced with a hint of mischief that sent a ripple of apprehension through the genin. With a puff of smoke and a swirl of leaves, the snake mistress vanished, leaving only the echo of her laughter and a lingering sense of unease in her wake. Time skip. Forest of Death. The towering gates of the Forest of Death stood before them like gargantuan sentinels, their rusted iron bars casting long, ominous shadows across the sun-dappled path. The foreboding structure exuded an aura of menace, as if warning any who dared to trespass that they might never return. "Welcome, brats." Anko's voice boomed from the depths of the forest, her tone laced with a sadistic glee that sent a shiver down the spines of her students. "To your training of hell." Naruto's gaze swept over the looming canopy of twisted branches and gnarled trunks, his azure eyes narrowing as he caught glimpses of the dangers lurking within the verdant confines. The rustle of undergrowth and the faint slithering of unseen creatures put his senses on high alert, every fiber of his being tensing in anticipation of the trials that awaited. "Yep, this bitch is crazy," Naruto mused to himself, his lips curling into a wry smirk. "So this part ends here. Alright, that's it for today's video, guys. Let me know in the comments section how was the story, and also don't forget to like, share and subscribe. I will meet you in another video, bye bye.